My name is Silas Merrick, and I've been married to Maribel for 17 years. That's a long time. Long enough for habits to become patterns and patterns to harden into silence. We had our routines: coffee in the morning, separate Netflix queues at night. Not cold exactly, just cooled. We had a life built like a porch swing, familiar creaks, some frayed ropes, but still hanging. That Saturday morning was like most others. I pattered into the kitchen in my robe and socks, the kind with worn heels and one stubborn hole near the toe. The coffee machine sputtered behind me, spitting steam into the quiet as if protesting its own job. Outside, the lawn glittered with dew, and the old sprinkler ticked away like it had its own language. Peaceful. Forgettable, even. Until I saw the photo. I wasn't even looking for it. Just thumbing through my phone while waiting for the brew to finish, tapping through notifications with sleepy indifference. And then Facebook served it to me, right there at the top of my feed, like it couldn't wait. Maribel, my wife. Her smile framed in soft office lighting, standing way too close to Trent. Trent, the work husband. The guy she joked about. The one she claimed made boring Zoom calls bearable. He's harmless, she once said, rolling her eyes. You're not really jealous, are you? There he was. His arm casually slung around her shoulders like he'd done it 100 times. Her head tilted in, her eyes half closed, lips parted mid-laugh like the camera had caught them in the middle of something private. Something soft. Something mine. The caption underneath was the real punch. My real partner. #workusband for life. My thumb hovered. I didn't blink. My heart didn't pound. There was no cinematic gasp or sudden tremble in my hands. Just a slow, mechanical emptiness spreading through my ribs. Like someone had opened a hatch in my chest and quietly vacuumed the air out. No panic. No shouting. Just a clean, sharp line slicing through 17 years. I walked back toward the counter, the coffee now finished, filling the air with a scent that suddenly meant nothing. I poured the mug like I always did, black with a splash of oat milk. The steam curled up toward my face, but I didn't sip. Instead, I opened the side drawer, the one beneath the toaster where we kept things too awkward to categorize. Batteries. Screwdrivers. A broken pair of sunglasses. In the beige folder. I had printed the papers weeks ago. That part of me, some quiet, doubting part, must have known. There had been signs. The extra hours. The polished replies. The way she turned her phone screen down when I walked into the room. Little things, like breadcrumbs left not to guide me, but to see if I'd follow. I placed the folder on the kitchen table, right where she usually dropped her purse. The light through the window hit it perfectly, like a spotlight. No note. No dramatic flourish. Just the facts, waiting. Then I walked back to the counter and picked up my phone. My fingers didn't hesitate. No trembling. No edits. I opened Facebook, tapped into the comment box beneath her photo, and typed, "Congratulations. The divorce papers are on the kitchen table." I hit post. No second guessing. No drafts. A small bubble of adrenaline rose in me. Not anger, but clarity. The kind you get when you finally wipe a mirror clean and see what's actually been staring back all along. I didn't linger. I didn't wait to see who'd comment next, or if the likes would stall. I set my phone face down on the counter, took the mug, and walked outside. The morning was bright. The kind of quiet suburban brightness that made you forget that people lied, that vows unraveled, that soft betrayals wore hashtags now. I turned the garden hose toward the rose bushes, letting the water run slow and even. The soil drank it up without protest. I thought of 17 years. The anniversaries, the vacations, the burnt Thanksgiving turkey we laughed about for months. The first time she kissed my wrist instead of my lips. The way she cried when her mother died and clung to me like I was the last unshakable thing in her world. Then I thought of how she leaned into Trent like he was home. The water pooled under the grass, soaking the roots. A few neighborhood kids rode by on bikes, their laughter echoing faintly like it came from another planet. I kept watering. My hand steady. My heart even. I didn't need to rehearse what I'd say when she got home. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't demand an explanation she'd twist into apology-shaped lies. I wouldn't beg for something she'd already given to someone else in boardrooms and bar lounges. No, I would keep watering the lawn. Let the world do what it does. Let her scroll through her notifications, smiling at hearts and thumbs up until she saw mine. Until she realized what I'd done. What I'd known. What I had waited to confirm. There would be no shouting match. No scene on the porch. Just the sound of her key not quite fitting in the lock she assumed she still owned. I adjusted the hose nozzle, making the stream gentler for the lilies. Her lilies. She always loved those. Bought them every April for the kitchen table. I almost laughed. Almost. Inside, the coffee cooled. The folder waited. And me? I stood in the sun, robe fluttering a little in the breeze, hand firm on the hose. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even bitter. I was awake. Finally. That morning, she lost a husband. But I gained clarity. The call came around 7:42 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was halfway through organizing my tax files, something I'd been putting off for months. The soft hum of the ceiling fan circled above me. A jazz playlist played low from my laptop speaker. Calm. Still. Methodical. Then her name lit up the screen, Maribel. I watched it ring twice. 3 times. I didn't feel heat in my chest. Just a hollow curiosity. Like someone peering into a window of a life that didn't belong to them anymore. I let it ring once more before answering. Hey, she said, drawing out the word like sugar on her tongue. I could hear her smiling through the line, that high-pitched cheeriness she used when she knew she was already in the wrong but wanted to disarm you first. You're not really mad, are you? She continued before I could even answer. I mean, come on, babe. It was a joke. Everyone does that stuff on Facebook. It's harmless. There it was. The shift. The manipulation wrapped in feigned innocence. I didn't speak. I just listened, leaning back in the chair, letting her talk. Her words tumbled out quickly, too quickly, like someone hurrying past a crime scene they caused. I mean, you know how people post stuff like that. It's just office humor. Trent's like, he's like a brother. You know how close our whole team is. People thought it was funny. She gave a nervous little laugh that scratched at the edge of desperation. Honestly, I think you're overreacting. I could almost picture her, pacing somewhere, maybe outside the hotel, maybe in her rental car, biting a thumbnail and checking her reflection in the rearview mirror every few seconds. Still dressed from whatever conference mixer she had been to, still running the script in her head like a PR professional trying to reframe a scandal. And you know how social media is, people blow things out of proportion. I didn't even think before I posted. Trent said something funny and, ugh, I shouldn't have tagged him. That's what you're upset about, right? I let a full beat pass. Long enough for her to fill it if she wanted to. She didn't. That alone told me she was waiting for a lifeline. I finally said, evenly, check the kitchen. The silence on her end was a different kind of loud. I imagined her blinking, confused, thinking maybe I was making a joke. That I was going to say something flippant next. That she could still talk her way through this. Over it. Around it. What? She said, her voice lighter, a little higher. What do you mean? I repeated it, calmly. Check. The kitchen. Another pause. Then came the brittle laugh. Wait, you're joking, right? Silas? You didn't actually. Come on. Don't be dramatic. She was unraveling, just a little. Her voice cracked at the end of the sentence, though she tried to keep the lilt of control. I could hear her mind flipping through options, trying to land on the one that would steer this conversation towards safety. I didn't respond. I just leaned forward and ended the call. She tried calling back immediately. I declined it without hesitation. My phone buzzed again and again. Then a message popped up. Silas, seriously. Don't do this. It's not what you think. Can we just talk? Another buzz. I'm coming home Monday. We can talk then, okay. I turned my phone off completely. I stared at the wall for a long moment after that. Not out of regret, not even satisfaction. Just observation. Like I'd stepped outside of time and was now watching the ending of a long play I'd accidentally starred in. The final act was unfolding, the curtains drawing closed, slowly, methodically, like velvet sliding over an old truth. I thought about the look she'd have on her face when she walked into the kitchen and saw the beige folder. How her fingers would hover over it before opening the flap. How her eyes would scan the papers, the asset inventory, the division agreement, the signature lines. How the air might rush out of her chest not from shock, but from recognition. Because somewhere deep down, she had to know this was coming. Not because of one photo. Not because of a hashtag. But because somewhere along the way, she stopped treating me like someone who mattered. And I had finally started acting accordingly. Outside, the sprinklers kicked on again. The rhythmic tick-tick-tick of water arcing across the yard filled the air. I poured myself another glass of water, slid open the back door, and stepped onto the patio. The sky was darkening, stars just beginning to peek out from behind the purple wash of evening. I sat down in the chair I'd refinished last summer. She had never really liked it, said it looked too rustic. I always thought it was honest. I thought of her scrolling through her feed again and again, deleting comments, maybe messaging Trent in a panic, wondering what people would think, wondering if they'd connect the dots. But mostly, I wondered if she'd understand that this wasn't some heat-of-the-moment decision. This was time catching up. This was consequence with a filing tab. This was clarity in Manila. No raised voice. No broken plates. Just a sentence, 5 words, that told her everything she needed to know. Check the kitchen. Monday morning felt unnaturally still. The kind of stillness that comes right before a controlled demolition, when the charges are set, the area cleared, and all that's left is waiting for someone to push the button. I didn't sleep much the night before. Not because I was conflicted, but because I was methodical. I'd laid everything out: timeline, documentation, evidence. I wasn't pacing or second-guessing. I was editing, cleaning up a mess someone else made with smiles and hashtags. And I knew exactly where to start. Durant and Voss had a strict code of conduct. I knew that because Maribel used to quote it when bragging about how professional her team was. They had monthly compliance meetings, annual refreshers, zero tolerance for anything that even looked like favoritism between superiors and their direct reports. And Trent? He reported directly to her. She was his evaluation officer. She signed off on his travel, his bonus justifications, even his training approvals. And yet there she was, smiling into his shoulder like the end credits were rolling on their Hallmark movie romance. So I typed slowly, carefully, clean subject line, conduct concern, Durant and Voss conference. I didn't use her name in the body. Not right away. I structured it the way an internal whistleblower would. Detached, measured, impersonal. Just a concerned party bringing potential misconduct to light. Please see attached. The enclosed screenshot contains a social media post shared publicly by a Durant and Voss employee during the firm's recent regional sales retreat. Given the visible familiarity between a supervisor and her direct report and the language used, this may present a violation of company policy regarding manager-subordinate boundaries. The photo was timestamped during company-funded travel hours. No signature. No email address linked to me. I used a secure, anonymous Dropbox plugin from an old burner account I once used to report a payroll glitch at my own job. The attachment: a clean screenshot of the Facebook post with the caption and timestamp visible. No extra commentary. Just the facts. I stared at the screen for one final second. Then I hit send. The moment I did, a strange calm settled over me. It wasn't vindictive. I didn't want to see her burn. I just wanted things to be what they were. Truth exposed. Consequences invited. I wasn't going to scream into a void while she laughed in boardrooms and typed winking emojis into Slack threads. By early afternoon, the post was gone. I hadn't saved the screenshot to just one folder. I had backups. Cloud. Drive. Offline USB. But the deletion told me all I needed to know. She'd been tipped off. Or worse, someone from inside had already reached out to her. That's when Jude messaged. Jude wasn't just a friend. He was the kind of friend you keep from high school because life keeps throwing you into the same orbit. We used to call him Firewall because back in senior year, he figured out how to spoof the school's internet filter and stream games on classroom monitors. Now, he worked in the IT department at Durant and Voss. He didn't talk much about work, and I never asked. But we played cards once a month, traded memes, checked in after holidays. I hadn't even told him about the Facebook post yet. His text came through like lightning cutting the sky. HR just flagged her. I stared at those words for a beat. I read them again. Then again. He followed up, your wife. Maribel. That post must have triggered an alert or something. I'm not in HR, but Celia just asked for her entire work laptop session history from the conference weekend. She didn't look happy. I didn't reply right away. Not because I was shocked, but because it was actually happening. The charges were set. And now someone was pacing toward the button. Later, over the phone, Jude told me more. They're pulling chat logs. Calendar entries. The shuttle manifest. Apparently other employees had already complained that she and Trent kept disappearing during the trip. And someone mentioned that they requested a shared Uber for an off-site dinner, on the company card. I closed my eyes and let the words wash over me. So they're taking it seriously? I asked. Oh yeah, he said, with a whistle. Celia's got that HR tone. You know the one. All polite fury and surgical calm. She's building a file. I've seen her do it before. When she gets quiet, someone's career is about to evaporate. I didn't smile. Didn't gloat. But I did stare out the window for a long time after that call. Watching the breeze ripple across the lawn I watered 2 days ago. The grass had bounced back quickly, resilient, like it didn't even remember what had been poured into its soil. By evening, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Maribel. Hey, weird thing. Did you see someone reported my Facebook post to HR? It's not a big deal, but it's just annoying. HR asked a bunch of questions. Like, really dumb ones. Did you see it? She was testing the water, fishing for information with a hook wrapped in casualness. I didn't respond. Then came another message. Seriously though, who would do that? It's just a dumb joke. Now Harlan's all serious about policy optics. Like, come on. Optics. She always did love that word. The illusion of order, the surface image of things being fine. As long as it looked okay, the truth could be distorted, postponed, filtered. But truth doesn't need an audience. It just needs a moment. And hers was already unfolding behind boardroom doors. There's a moment when the shift happens, not with noise, but with stillness. That was the space I was in when I opened my laptop Monday night, logged into my financial accounts, and began moving with precision. Maribel was still playing a game of charm and spin with HR, pretending her photo was a harmless joke. I was playing chess. This wasn't about rage. Rage is messy, loud, unreliable. This was about calculation, about preparing a clean landing for my future self, the one who wouldn't have to share space, time, or name with someone who called another man her real partner. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the dining table, and clicked through tabs. Our accounts were linked, at least the ones she knew about. But what she didn't realize was that I'd opened a private trust fund 3 months ago. Originally, it was meant as a backup, a safety net. Now, it was a lifeboat. I started small. I transferred my personal savings quietly and in chunks under reportable thresholds. Then came the brokerage account. I'd funded most of it over the years, using end-of-year bonuses and tax returns while she focused on retail therapy and curated girls' trips to Aspen. One by one, I untied knots. The next move was the life insurance. I navigated through the portal, updated my beneficiary. Her name disappeared from the document with one click, replaced by my sister Lorna. A woman who never liked Maribel but stayed respectful for my sake. I didn't call Lorna to tell her. She wouldn't gloat. She'd simply nod and say, about damn time. Then came the credit cards. I didn't cancel hers. That would have sparked drama. Instead, I reduced the credit limit to a modest figure, just enough for gas, groceries, and necessities. No more surprise spa weekends or charges at overpriced boutiques she only went to for the Instagram aesthetic. No alert, no notice, no call from the bank. Just a quiet tightening of the tap. Next, the shared checking account. That one took more finesse. I left enough for the mortgage autopay, utilities, and her standard grocery runs. Just enough to seem normal, but not enough to build any new castles. The rest, my portion, my earnings, moved elsewhere. I looked over the numbers like a general scanning a battlefield. Everything was accounted for. Nothing left behind. And it was all done without a word. No raised voices. No accusations. Just math. A new text lit up my phone as I was logging out of the final portal. From her. Maribel, we should talk. Short. Careful. Calculated. Maybe. I stared at it for a moment before flipping the phone screen down on the table like it had interrupted a symphony. We should talk. That's what people say when they want to rewrite the scene after the damage is done. But I wasn't interested in rewrites. I was finalizing the chapter. She didn't get a reply. I went to the hall closet, pulled down the filing box labeled Important, and opened the beige divorce folder again. It was all there. Asset listings, legal separation documents, statements of intent, custody waiver, no kids, thankfully. The papers were reviewed, notarized, and quietly waiting for the moment I decided to make them real. I thumbed through each page, checking that every number lined up. This wasn't about drama. This was about order. I didn't want chaos. I wanted closure. In the upstairs office, I packed away the last remnants of our joint life, framed photos, a couple of her business plaques that once hung on. After that, I moved through the house with intention. I wasn't just cleaning. I was rebalancing. The guest bedroom, once just a room we offered to friends or family, had been quietly prepped. Her things, what I hadn't already boxed, were neatly arranged. Shoes, toiletries, the stack of novels she never finished, and her favorite navy robe. The beige folder sat right on the guest bed, open to the signature page. I'd already signed mine. This wasn't punishment. This was design. By the time I finished, it was close to midnight. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, the refrigerator humming like a tired engine, the clock ticking with deliberate certainty. We'd built a life in this house. Chosen tiles. Argued over cabinet colors. Painted walls on rainy Saturdays. I didn't hate those memories. I just understood now that they weren't enough to hold together a life being slowly hollowed out from underneath. I remembered the way she once looked at me when we signed the mortgage paperwork. Hopeful. Trusting. That woman? She was long gone. Replaced by someone who called her subordinate her real partner and still expected me to play the supportive husband while she curated her own narrative. So I left the house exactly the way she remembered it, tidy, calm, welcoming. Only, she didn't live here anymore. Not really. The version of me who tolerated half-truths and excuses? He'd been buried beneath her hashtags. This version? He understood execution. Quiet. Intentional. Final. And I was done talking. Tuesday morning began like any other for them, anyway. For Maribel, it probably started with hair curled, heels snapped on, and a forced smile aimed at her reflection. She was good at that, the illusion. The projection. I could imagine her brushing off whatever conversation HR had initiated the day before with a quick joke or a dismissive shrug. She always had a pivot in her pocket. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have anticipated, was that the very foundation beneath her had already begun to crack. Because unlike the curated version of her life she posted online, real-world structures tend to buckle when you forget integrity is part of the build. Around mid-morning, my phone lit up. It was Jude. Just his name flashing on the screen was enough to make me pause mid-sip from my coffee. I answered, walking out onto the porch, my tone calm. Controlled. Talk to me, I said. Jude didn't waste time. You should have seen Harlan's face. My lips twitched at the edge, but I didn't smile. Not yet. He called me into the server room this morning, Jude continued. Said he needed the security logs from the conference hotel. Room numbers. Shuttle check-ins. Time-stamped card keys. He didn't say why at first, but I could tell something was under his skin. Then he showed me the post. There was a beat of silence between us. He had no idea? I asked, though I already knew the answer. None. None, man. He looked like someone kicked him in the stomach. Said, she's my senior account manager. She oversees 6 regions. Then just sat down and stared at the photo for like 20 seconds straight. I pictured it. Harlan, the type of boss who probably prided himself on running a clean ship, a man who trusted people like Maribel to carry the flag forward. Only to realize she wasn't carrying it, she was dragging it through the mud in front of her whole team. She and Trent were sharing a hotel room? I asked, already knowing the answer. Jude exhaled sharply. Yup. I didn't tell Harlan that HR already had it. One of the associates said they'd seen her come out of Trent's room at 7 a.m. wearing his jacket. Another said they ordered drinks on the same company tab late Saturday night, like 11 p.m., just the two of them. Whole team saw it. So it wasn't just a slip. It wasn't just a photo. It was a pattern. A visible, traceable breach. And people had noticed. They lit the whole building on fire, Jude added. You just handed HR the matches. I didn't say anything right away. I leaned on the porch railing, watching the wind rustle through the hedges I'd trimmed the day before. The neighborhood felt as quiet as I needed it to be, still and balanced. You're sure Harlan's taking it seriously? I finally asked. Oh, he's past serious. I overheard him in Celia's office. He said, if I sign off on this, I'm complicit. Then something about how they have a new contract going to the board next month, and he's not risking it blowing up because 2 employees played house on company time. A quiet pulse of something moved through me, not pride, not satisfaction. Just validation. Like the universe had finally handed back what it owed me, stamped and notarized. I think you broke something big, Jude said after a pause. Not just her rep. She was a finalist for a division lead role, Silas. Like global ops. This was her year. Was. I closed my eyes for a moment. Not to gloat. Just to breathe in the reality of what was no longer hidden. She did it to herself, I said quietly. Yeah, but you handed them the flashlight. After we hung up, I stayed on the porch for a while longer. Let the truth settle. Let it anchor me. Maribel had always walked a tightrope of charm and control, believing she could recalibrate any narrative with a grin and a glass of Chardonnay. But she never accounted for consequences. Not real ones. Not the kind you can't untag or delete. Later that day, I checked her social media again. The account was still up, but it had gone silent. No new posts. No comments. And the photo that started it all? Scrubbed. Not just deleted, scrubbed. Like someone had gone in and wiped it from the archive. But digital footprints don't disappear just because you panic. HR had what they needed. And now her boss did too. I wondered if she still thought this was just a bad PR day. If she believed she could show up with another rehearsed line and smirk her way back into good standing. That had always been her trick, rebranding the problem without ever resolving it. But corporate structure doesn't care about charm when money, liability, and public image are on the line. That evening, she didn't call. I expected she might, but nothing came through. Maybe she was busy spinning stories. Maybe she was sitting in a conference room with a silent panel and a printout of her own words on the table in front of her. Or maybe, for the first time, she was sitting in silence, staring down the reality that some decisions don't get a second draft. Let her feel it. Let her sit with the ripple of her own choices. This wasn't about revenge. This was the weight of accountability, and it had finally found its target. She came back 2 days earlier than scheduled. I heard the Uber pull into the driveway around 4:15 p.m. The tires crunching against the gravel, the low sound of the trunk opening. I was in the sunroom, sipping green tea, watching the light bend through the glass like nothing in the world was about to shift. But I knew. I knew from the second that car stopped who it was. How she'd walk up the steps, what face she'd put on, how her heels would click like punctuation on an unwelcome sentence. The driver helped her unload one roller bag and a smaller carry-on. She didn't look up at the window. Probably assumed I was inside, watching TV or pacing, waiting for her like a man desperate for closure. But I wasn't pacing. I was anchored. She tried the front door first. I heard the rattle of the knob, the telltale metallic thud when it refused to turn. Then silence. I didn't get up. I waited. A second later, the doorbell rang. Once. Then again, more insistent. Then a pause, like she was choosing her opening line. I walked to the front door, calm, measured. When I opened it, she was standing there with that perfectly constructed face, half apology, half disbelief, mascara still flawless, hair curled like she thought the right presentation might take the edge off what she'd done. "You changed the locks," she said, one eyebrow arched. I looked at her. Not through her. Not around her. Just directly, quietly, fully. "No," I said. "I changed the future." Her expression cracked for half a second, just a twitch at the corner of her mouth. She recovered quickly, tried to laugh, but it came out tight. "Come on, Silas," she said, gesturing vaguely to the door. "Let's just talk inside. This is ridiculous." It was one post. It was a choice, I cut in. Not just one. A series. She blinked at me, lips parting like she had something to say but couldn't quite find the spin. She looked past me into the house, eyes scanning for evidence of what had changed. She must have noticed the missing photos by the stairway, the absence of her shoes by the coat rack. I stepped aside, but not for the front door. I nodded toward the side of the house. "The guest house is open. Your things are there." She turned her head slowly, like she didn't quite believe me. "I boxed up what mattered," I added. "Labeled everything. You'll find the beige folder on the bed. Asset division. Already signed on my end." Maribel's jaw clenched. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. That would have been too raw, too unrehearsed. Instead, she gave me this look, part wounded pride, part calculation, as if she were waiting for me to realize I'd made a mistake and beg her back inside. But I didn't flinch. I didn't fill the silence with comfort. She finally stepped off the porch, walked down the side path slowly, heels clicking softer now, muted by the gravel. I didn't follow. I just watched her disappear toward the small cottage we once called the Overflow when her mother came to visit. The guest house had been cleaned, aired out, and furnished with nothing more than what she'd need. Her clothes, her skincare bottles, the 3 novels she kept by the bed. I even included the ceramic mug she always reached for, the one with the chip on the rim that she refused to throw out. Not out of sentiment, just habit. On the bed, I placed the folder. Clean. Neat. With a pin beside it. It wasn't just about logistics. It was symbolism. This wasn't her home anymore. It was her landing pad. Temporary. Conditional. Like the grace I was offering. She didn't come back out that evening. I imagine she sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, flipping through the folder, running her hand over the numbers and allocations, trying to measure loss like a spreadsheet, trying to see if she could reframe this, salvage it. But the terms were clear. Split assets. No alimony. Separate accounts. A clean, bloodless extraction. Later, I made dinner. Just for me. Stir-fried vegetables and jasmine rice, something simple. I ate at the kitchen island, alone. Peaceful. For years, we'd done that thing couples do, dancing around problems with routines. We had Tuesday takeout nights, Saturday errands, and the Sunday recharge ritual where she'd put on a face mask and scroll TikTok for hours while I read or mowed the lawn. But behind all that structure was distance, slowly layered until I couldn't see the foundation anymore. That night, as the guest house lights turned off one by one, I sat on the porch in the dark, letting the night breeze brush against my face. She'd walked into the fire herself. I just made sure she couldn't drag me into it with her. I knew the exact time her meeting started, 9 a.m. sharp. HR didn't play with lateness, especially not when the room was already humming with consequences. Durant and Voss had an entire floor dedicated to compliance, but when things turned serious, they reserved Conference Room 2B. That room had no windows. Just one polished table, always too cold, surrounded by chairs that somehow made everyone feel either too small or too exposed. That's where she was headed, dressed in cream and navy, like she was walking into a boardroom pitch, not a reckoning. She wore her war paint well. That blouse was one I'd seen her iron on promotion days. That watch was the gift I'd bought her during our 9th anniversary trip to Charleston, the one she said made her feel executive. She had always known how to frame herself for optics. Even now, as she entered the building, I imagined her posture, back straight, lips set in professional calm, heels clicking a measured beat of control. But inside that room, she wasn't in control anymore. Mr. Harland was already seated when she walked in, flanked by Celia from HR and a corporate attorney named Gina Markham. The tone was set before a word was spoken. The screen behind them displayed a folder labeled Internal Conduct Review, Maribel Merrick. Not allegation. Not discussion. Review. The kind of language that means decisions are already halfway made. I wasn't there, of course, but Jude was. Not in the room, but close. He had his ear to the hallway, working quietly, eyes down, pretending to organize AV cables while he listened through the open sliver of the door. She tried to lead. Jude told me over the phone later. Sat down and smiled. Asked if this was going to be quick. Harland didn't even respond. He didn't have to. Celia opened a manila folder and began laying out the timeline. First, the Facebook post. There it was, printed in color, the image of her tucked in close to Trent, the hashtag #WorkIsBanned for life. Hashtag still painfully visible underneath. She leaned forward, tried to explain it away as a joke, an inside team thing. It wasn't meant literally, she said. It's office culture. Everyone uses that phrase. I didn't think it would be taken seriously. But Celia was ready. She pulled out another printout. Internal text messages from the company phone system, Trent and Maribel exchanging emojis and phrases that were unmistakably personal. One of them included a line from Maribel. Can't wait for tonight, same room as last time, winky face. Then came the travel receipts. 2 company-paid dinners at restaurants off-site from the hotel venue, both for 2 people, both billed to her corporate card. Dates and times matched perfectly with Trent's card key entries from the hotel room logs. He'd entered room 612, hers, at 10:48 p.m. and didn't badge out until 7:21 the next morning. She tried to pivot, Jude told me, his voice low, almost apologetic. Said it was late, that he had missed his shuttle, that they worked late and just crashed after watching TV. But Gina, the corporate attorney, didn't blink. She slid across a photo that had been taken at the bar, the same one from Facebook, different angle. This time, someone from the team had captured them holding hands under the table. A blurred image, but unmistakable. Maribel froze. She knew then. I could feel it from a distance. The moment she realized she was no longer in a meeting. She was in a tribunal. Harland finally spoke. Jude said his voice was even, exhausted more than angry. You're not being investigated for poor judgment, he said. You're being reviewed for a violation of ethical conduct, breach of leadership standards, and financial misuse of company funds. This is not about perception. This is about your actions. She reached, apparently, for one last card. She claimed it was consensual, private, outside of company hours. That they were adults. That's when Celia brought up the power dynamic. Durant and Voss's Code of Leadership Ethics, Section 7. Managers are explicitly prohibited from engaging in romantic or sexual relationships with direct reports, regardless of consent, if one party holds evaluative or disciplinary authority over the other. Trent was her direct report. She had signed his quarterly reviews. She had approved his travel, bonuses, and training certifications. She had failed to disclose any change in their relationship status, failed to recuse herself from decisions regarding him, failed to notify HR of potential conflict of interest, all while billing dinners, drinks, and shared transportation to the company. At that point, she stopped defending. Just sat there, according to Jude, quietly blinking as the reality settled. She didn't cry, Jude said. Didn't yell. Just nodded like someone who finally saw the wall they'd been running toward for months. By the end of the meeting, Harlan didn't even ask for a rebuttal. He stood, said that further internal communication would be handled by HR and legal, and walked out without shaking her hand. Celia slid an envelope across the table, an interim administrative leave order, effective immediately. Her badge was disabled within minutes. Her work laptop access terminated. Email suspended. She was to surrender all company property within 24 hours. No farewell emails. No wrap-up calls. Just erasure. By the time Jude finished telling me everything, I was standing in the garage, hands still dusty from reshelving old paint cans. I hadn't moved. Just listened, letting it all settle in the space between who she used to be and who she'd just become. I didn't feel triumphant. I wasn't punching the air or toasting to her downfall. But I felt something settle in my chest, like justice, maybe. Or balance. Like watching gravity do what it does without interference. You drop a stone, and it falls. You betray trust, and eventually, truth calls the meeting. That afternoon, I saw her car pull up to the guest house. She didn't storm in. She didn't knock. She just sat in the car for a long while. I could see her through the blinds, gripping the wheel, unmoving. Finally, she got out, walked slowly to the side door. Her cream blouse wilted in the summer heat, her navy heels now scuffed with reality. I didn't go out to meet her. I stayed inside. Because her real meeting wasn't in that boardroom. It was in the aftermath. She didn't knock this time. Didn't bother with the doorbell either. She let herself in through the side entry of the main house like she still lived here, like nothing had changed. I was in the den, the old wingback chair beside the fireplace cradling me like it had every quiet evening before she turned our life into spectacle. My tea, untouched, rested on the armrest, steam curling lazily into the stillness. Then came the sound of the door swinging open, brisk heels on hardwood, and her voice. Sharp, breathless, cut through with disbelief. You sabotaged me. Not a greeting. Not a question. Just an accusation hurled like she had every right to hurl it. I didn't respond. Didn't turn my head. I reached for the tea and took a sip, the ceramic warm against my hand, steadying me. I know it was you, she continued, stepping further in. The HR email. The timing. You did this to ruin me. I lowered the cup gently onto the side table and folded my hands in my lap. She stood in the doorway now, arms crossed tightly over her cream blouse like she was bracing against a storm that she started. You're quiet now? Just going to sit there and pretend you didn't nuke my job, my reputation, everything? Still, I didn't speak. I had prepared for this moment. Not with words, but with distance. With insulation. You don't give a fire more oxygen when the damage is done. You seal the space, let the embers die on their own. You think this makes you noble? She sneered. You think because I made one mistake, you get to burn everything down? I turned my head slowly. Looked at her. Not with anger. Not even disappointment. Just that heavy clarity that arrives when someone finally reveals who they really are. One. I said, voice calm. One mistake. She scoffed. Oh, don't do that. Don't start tallying things up like you were some flawless husband. You were boring, Silas. Predictable. I needed more. I nodded once, slowly. Not in agreement, just in recognition. That was it, TH. Instead, I reached beside me and picked up a small, rectangular device from the side table. I pressed play. Her voice echoed through the room. Her exact words from 30 seconds ago, sharp and crystalline. You sabotaged me. I know it was you. You did this to ruin me. The recording stopped. She froze. Her eyes narrowed. You're recording me now? Please route all communication through legal counsel. I said. It wasn't just a line. It was a declaration. A wall she couldn't scale anymore. She blinked, stunned. The color in her face drained just slightly, like she wasn't expecting to be met with policy instead of emotion. Like she came ready for a sparring match, but found herself punching fog. Her eyes drifted past me, toward the hallway. That's when she saw the envelope on the entry table, the one marked confidential. HR correspondence. Her gaze locked onto it like prey to a trap, but she didn't move. "You don't have to do this," she said, a note of desperation creeping in now. "We can figure it out. It was just—" "No," I cut in gently. "You already figured it out. Every choice you made, every caption you posted, every ride you shared with him. You figured out what mattered. Now I'm just honoring it." She took a step forward, then stopped. "I'm still your wife," she said. "You were," I corrected. "But this house doesn't hold that title anymore. And neither do I." She didn't cry. I half expected tears. I think part of her did too. That maybe she could trigger some remaining flicker of pity. But I was too far removed. Not hardened. Just done. "I gave everything to this life," she said, voice breaking. 17 years. "And you gave the end of it to someone else," I replied. She stepped back slowly, breathing shallow. Her hands fell from her chest to her sides like they no longer knew what to hold. Then she said something that would have gutted me years ago. Maybe even months ago. "I don't have anyone left." There it was. The quiet horror. Not that I had responded, not that I'd exposed her, but that her safety net, the story she told herself about control and options, had snapped. She had thought Trent was an upgrade, a rush, a midlife spark. But HR didn't side with sparks. Her boss had gone silent. Her subordinates had turned into witnesses. And now, even I, the last piece in the old foundation, was stepping back. She turned slowly and walked toward the door. Not defeated, just weightless, like a person who realized the map she was following led to nowhere. I waited until the door clicked shut behind her. Then I rose, walked to the table, and picked up the envelope. Inside were copies of the HR memos Jude had slipped me, indirectly, through encrypted files. I'd never opened them again. I didn't need to. I already knew what they said. She was radioactive now. Not just inside the company, but to anyone tied to it. No recommendations. No quiet transfers. Just distance. I went back to the den, picked up my tea, now lukewarm, and sipped. This wasn't revenge. It was restraint. Because if I'd wanted revenge, I would have posted the emails, the bar tab photo, the text about the room key, publicly. I would have tagged her in a carefully worded goodbye letter on LinkedIn. I would have emailed every person she tried to climb past in the company. But I didn't. I let the silence do the work. Sometimes the most devastating thing you can offer someone who's built their life on attention is none. The courtroom wasn't large. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic, no marble columns or echoing gavels. Just rows of oak benches, a modest judge's bench raised slightly, and the dull murmur of legal proceedings being recorded by a stenographer whose face never moved. Still, it carried a weight. The kind that settled into your ribs and pressed down gently, reminding you that this was real. Final. Public. I wore a charcoal suit. Simple. Not flashy. Just the kind of thing a man wears when he knows he doesn't need to impress. Only to present truth with clean hands. Maribel sat across the aisle, flanked by her attorney, Ben Caraway. He couldn't have been more than 30, maybe 32 if you squinted hard enough. His briefcase looked borrowed. His tie was knotted too tight. Maribel had downgraded from the high-profile litigator she once hinted at hiring. Maybe because she thought it would be an easy split. Maybe because her reputation had already cost her too much. She didn't look at me, not directly. Her eyes flickered in my direction once, when I entered, but then she busied herself with flipping through papers that didn't need flipping. Her lips were tight. Her expression unreadable. Not remorseful. Not hostile. Just blank. The expression of someone trying to pretend they were somewhere else. The bailiff called our names, and we rose. Case number 19, CV 0870. Merrick versus Merrick. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Judge Margot Tallis presided. An older woman with short silver hair and clear disdain for theatrics. I liked her instantly. She didn't look for emotion. She looked for documentation, for evidence, for precision. Marcus, my attorney, stood with the calm of someone who didn't need to bluster to be right. He was everything Ben wasn't: measured, concise, unimpressed by distractions. Your Honor, Marcus began, this case is straightforward. We're not contesting custody, as there are no children. We are not contesting prenuptial agreements because there are none. What we are presenting is a clear case for financial division, based on marital misconduct that directly impacted shared resources, professional reputation, and contractual trust. Ben shifted awkwardly beside Maribel, cleared his throat. We would like to raise the issue of emotional equity, he said. Mrs. Merrick contributed significantly to the emotional and professional support of Mr. Merrick over their 17-year marriage. Her actions, while regrettable, should not nullify her claim to a fair distribution of assets, including potential alimony. Judge Tallis didn't blink. Do you have evidence of Mr. Merrick's financial dependency on your client? Well, not dependency, Your Honor. But an emotional investment should hold weight. After all, 17 years. Marcus stepped forward. We do have evidence, Your Honor. Not of dependency, but of breach. A documented HR investigation at Durant and Voss, where Mrs. Merrick was employed as a regional manager. The investigation concluded that she engaged in a workplace relationship with her direct subordinate, Trent Holloway. This relationship, undisclosed and overlapping with business travel, resulted in a policy violation that led to her termination. Judge Tallis turned to Ben. Is this accurate? Ben hesitated. Maribel didn't even lift her head. Finally, Ben replied, there was a separation from the company. Yes. The investigation. So we're not disputing costs, the judge said. Continue, Mr. Davis. Marcus nodded. We have internal documentation, timestamps, expense reports, and digital correspondence confirming Mrs. Merrick's behavior. There's no request for punitive damages. We're simply requesting a fair division based on the facts. I sat still as the documents were submitted, as photos were handed to the clerk, as screenshots and financial ledgers moved across the judge's desk like a quiet storm. Maribel didn't flinch, but she didn't speak, either. Her lawyer kept shifting, trying to soften the language, but you can't soften facts once they're signed in black and white. Judge Tallis reviewed the folder for what felt like forever, then removed her reading glasses and folded her hands. Given the nature of the dissolution and the documentation presented, I see no grounds to support an alimony award. The property settlement appears fair. Mr. Merrick retains the primary residence, vehicle, and 60% of shared financial assets. The remaining 40% will be deposited into a separate account for Mrs. Merrick upon finalization. Additionally, Mr. Merrick's life insurance policy and trust funds have already been legally redirected, and no reversal is warranted. Ben tried to object, his voice raised slightly. Your Honor, if I may. No, Mr. Carraway. You may not, she said, her tone sharp and absolute. You had every opportunity to contest these claims with counter-evidence. You brought sentiment to a documentation hearing. This court operates on facts. That was the moment I looked at Maribel, not out of vengeance or victory, but because it was the last time I would see her in a room with my name still attached to hers. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just stared at the table, not with sadness, with stillness. The kind of stillness that comes when a door finally closes behind you and there's no knob on your side. The judge signed the dissolution papers with a firm stroke. This marriage is legally dissolved. Next case. Just like that, we were unbound. I stood, thanked Marcus, and walked past her without a word. Not to be cruel, just to preserve the silence we both deserved. Because sometimes, the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. The rose bushes were coming in strong that morning. I trimmed them with quiet focus, pruning dead heads with each snip, not out of anger, but routine. There was something satisfying about it, methodical, restorative. The sun had just crested over the neighbor's roof, slanting soft gold across the yard. Birds chirped high above like they hadn't read any of the emails, like they didn't care about inboxes or broken vows. I liked that about them. Somewhere behind me, the guest house door creaked open. I didn't turn around. I could feel her standing there. Maribel, watching me through the screened porch. She hadn't spoken to me since the hearing. No knocks. No apologies. Just long silences and short footsteps that started and stopped behind walls we no longer shared. At one point, she'd left a note in the mailbox, just one folded line. Can we talk? I never opened it. I didn't need to. I already knew every version of the conversation she was capable of offering. And none of them came with truth she hadn't already buried under a caption and a lie. That morning, I knew she was waiting on something. Had been for days. She hadn't said it, but I saw her laptop open on the kitchen island when I passed by the other day. Her phone was glued to her palm like oxygen. Notifications buzzed constantly, emails, alerts, maybe group chats where people were too polite to ask what really happened, or too afraid to be seen caring. But today, she was waiting on one email. One that would come with a decision sealed in corporate font and sterile phrasing. One final message from Durant and Voss. And I knew when it came she'd scream. It happened just after 11. I didn't hear the notification chime, but I didn't have to. The scream started low, a choked sound, the kind that belongs to someone who still believes there's time to undo what they've done. Then it rose, sharper, wilder. It wasn't dramatic. It was final. I stood by the rose bush, still holding the pruning shears in my gloved hand, the warm air brushing past me like nothing had happened. I didn't look up. I heard her voice through the screen door. No, 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 no. She stumbled into the yard, barefoot, still in the silk robe she'd worn like armor all week. Her hair was tangled from sleep, or maybe from tossing and turning through every minute of silence I'd gifted her. She had her phone in her hand, gripped so tight her knuckles were white. She was crying now, but the kind of crying that sounds like disbelief, like betrayal from a ghost she thought she could control. I let her speak first. They fired me. She stood at the edge of the lawn, not crossing it, not coming closer. As if the grass marked some sacred boundary now. I clipped one final bud and turned toward her. They let me go. No severance. No option to reapply. They said my behavior reflected poorly on the company and my judgment undermined the leadership structure. I said nothing. It was one mistake, she whispered. I turned fully to face her now, gloves still on, shears dangling at my side like a forgotten weapon. No, I said. It wasn't one. Her lip quivered, but I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. Because that's what time gives you when you stop chasing closure from the person who fractured you. You're happy, she said, accusingly. You're just standing there like this is what you wanted. No, I said again, quieter this time. I just made peace with the truth before you did. She looked down at her phone, hands trembling now. I gave them everything. No, I corrected. You gave them the version of you that served you best. Until it didn't. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of the roses between us like an invisible line. You don't know what it's like, she said. To fall that fast. To have people look at you like you're poison. I do, I said. You just didn't notice. Because you were the one doing the pushing. She flinched at that, visibly. For a second, I thought she might walk forward, say something softer, something human. But then her spine straightened. Her voice sharpened again. You sent that email. You tipped them off. You planned all of this. Don't act like you're clean. I didn't plan your actions, I said. I just stopped protecting them. She blinked. That landed. And somewhere behind her anger, I saw her realize that everything that happened, the unraveling, the HR folder, the cold goodbye email, wasn't about punishment. It was about exposure. I didn't say anything else. I turned back to the rose bush and clipped another spent bloom. I could feel her watching me, but she didn't speak again. Eventually, I heard the slow steps retreating across the gravel path. The door clicked softly shut behind her. I let the silence expand around me. Later that afternoon, I saw the blinds in the guest house lower. No movement after that. No lights. Like the whole structure had folded in on itself. I made dinner for one that evening, grilled salmon, roasted carrots, and couscous with lemon zest. A soft jazz playlist played in the background, the notes gliding through the kitchen like a gentle affirmation that peace didn't always come with trumpets. Sometimes it just showed up with quiet hands and steady breath. I didn't check her social media, though I knew people would be talking. Durant and Voss wasn't subtle with their firings. Her absence would be obvious by now. The group photo from last quarter's conference, the smiling headshot on the executive page, all erased. Her inbox deactivated. The message would have read something simple. After internal review, your position is no longer tenable. Effective immediately. Thank you for your contributions. Signed, Julian R., Penn CEO. The man she once toasted at an executive retreat. The one who called her visionary in the company newsletter. Now, he was the one who digitally erased her in a single sentence. She must have read it 5 times before she screamed. I imagine she kept checking her spam folder, her LinkedIn, her other inboxes. Maybe she refreshed the Durant and Voss portal like a prayer. But there would be no follow-up. No soft landing. Just that sentence and silence. And me? I sat in the backyard again, tea in hand, as the sun dipped low and the cicadas began to sing. The grass swayed gently in the breeze. The same lawn she once thought was beneath her. The same soil she stepped over without thanks. I had kept watering it while she built castles with borrowed bricks. Now all the noise was gone. No meetings. No calls. No curated smiles or filtered lies. Just stillness. Just breath. Just me. And for the first time in 17 years, I wasn't holding my breath waiting to be seen. I had already found what she never thought I would. Peace.
You're off the project until you publicly apologize to my ex-husband, my wife, the CFO, yelled in the all-hands. I just nodded. Okay. Next morning, she smirked. Learned your lesson. Then she saw my desk cleared and the resignation letter. The company lawyer burst in, pale, shouting, "Ma'am, tell me you didn't." It started on a Thursday morning, the kind that already smelled like burnt coffee, recycled ambition, and bad decisions dressed in business casual. The office was buzzing with that fake kind of productivity people put on before an all-hands meeting. You know the drill. Everyone suddenly clicking their mouse extra loud like the sound itself makes them look important. Me? I was in my cubicle, running on 4 hours of sleep and pure caffeine spite. For the past 3 weeks, I'd been cleaning up an audit disaster left behind by the company's favorite visionary consultant, also known as my wife's ex-husband, Adrian Foster. Yeah, you heard that right. My wife's ex. A man whose entire personality could be summarized as LinkedIn post with bad lighting. Adrian had been demoted a few months ago after his revolutionary compliance automation nearly burned down our accounting system. Instead of firing him, upper management gave him a participation trophy title, Strategic Consultant. Translation: someone who gets paid a six-figure salary to say buzzwords like synergy and cross-functional alignment without doing anything measurable. Meanwhile, I was the guy working nights reprogramming his mess so the company wouldn't get slapped with a federal audit fine. I was expecting at least a quiet acknowledgement at the all-hands meeting, a simple, "nice work, Mason." Maybe even a fake clap from HR. I should have known better. The meeting started like every corporate cult ritual. My wife, Jenna, the chief financial officer, hair flawless, tone managerial, smile expensive, stood at the front of the room with her assistant hovering nearby, holding a tablet like it was the Ark of the Covenant. Behind her stood Adrian, wearing that smug, "I just survived another demotion" grin, and the kind of cologne that could double as a fire hazard. She cleared her throat. "Good morning, everyone. Today's all hands will be short. I just want to address the recent audit situation." I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee, waiting for my pat on the back. Instead, she slammed a folder on the conference table so hard half the interns jumped. "Before we move forward," she said, glaring at me like I'd just insulted her dog, "I need to make something clear. Mason is off the audit project until he issues a public apology to Adrian." The entire room went silent. You could have heard a stapler drop 3 cubicles away. Even the HR director, Karen with a K, blinked so hard her eyelash extensions nearly took flight. Adrian folded his arms, doing that fake, humble head tilt people do when they're secretly thrilled to be part of drama. "It's not personal," he said, pretending to sound gracious. "It's just about maintaining team harmony." Team harmony? This was coming from a guy who once misspelled the word budget in a board presentation and blamed the intern's energy. I set my coffee cup down and just stared at them both. Not in anger, not in shock. Just that calm, neutral kind of stare that says, "Oh, you think you're in charge now?" Cute. Everyone was waiting for me to explode, to argue, to defend myself, to throw out a, "That's ridiculous." Instead, I smiled. "Okay. Just one word. Crisp, clean, polite. The verbal equivalent of pulling a grenade pin and walking away." Jenna blinked. "Excuse me?" I said, "Okay," I repeated, calm as meditation music. Then I leaned back, crossed my arms, and looked around the room like we were voting on whether pineapple belongs on pizza. She was expecting a scene. The whole office was. People were already adjusting their mental popcorn supply. But instead, I gave them silence. The kind that makes people uncomfortable because they don't know what comes next. HR coughed nervously. Someone at the back whispered, "Did he just say okay?" Adrian shifted in his seat, clearly thrown off that I wasn't performing the meltdown they all wanted. See, I'd learned something about corporate life a long time ago. Loud anger gets you labeled unprofessional. Quiet compliance, that's how you start wars. Jenna gathered her notes, visibly irritated that her dramatic little power play didn't hit the emotional notes she rehearsed in front of the bathroom mirror that morning. "Fine," she said sharply. Meeting adjourned. People scattered faster than interns, avoiding unpaid overtime. Adrian lingered behind, pretending to help her collect papers, but mostly trying to look important. I grabbed my coffee mug, stood up, and gave him that half smile I reserve for people who think they've won. Congratulations on the promotion, I said, tone smooth as butter. Hope you enjoy the view from middle management purgatory. He chuckled awkwardly. You know, Mason, you really need to learn how to work with people. That attitude's what keeps you from real leadership roles. Right, I said, pretending to think about it. Because leadership's about letting your wife's ex manage your projects without basic literacy in Excel. His smile faltered for half a second before he recovered. It's just business, man. Sure, I said, nodding like I believed him. Just business. But inside, I was already 3 steps ahead. Because here's the thing. When someone tries to humiliate you publicly, the real power move isn't fighting back. It's letting them think they succeeded. Let them dance on your ego while you quietly pull the floor out from under them. I walked out of that meeting with my dignity intact, my reputation slightly bruised, and a new plan forming faster than my coffee could cool. Back at my desk, people avoided eye contact like I was contagious. HR peeked out from her office, probably drafting an email with "incident" in the subject line. One of the interns, Jake, mouthed, "Are you okay?" from behind his monitor. I smiled and mouthed back, "Never better." I spent the rest of the morning off the project, which really just meant I had time to clean up a few personal files, make a few encrypted backups, and recheck some contracts I hadn't looked at since the company rebranded. Every click was therapy. Every file I saved was a quiet little act of defiance. Around lunch, Jenna texted me. "Jenna, we'll talk about this later." Me. "Sure thing, bring Adrian. He seems to be running things now." No reply. By 3 p.m., Adrian sent me a Slack message, probably thinking he was extending an olive branch. "Adrian, no hard feelings, right? Let's keep this professional." "Mhm." "Of course, I'd hate to see you get emotional at work again." He didn't respond either. When I got home that evening, Jenna was waiting in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, acting like nothing happened. "Rough day?" she asked, swirling her Chardonnay like she was auditioning for the Real Housewives of Finance. "Not really," I said, loosening my tie. "I just got some free time." She laughed nervously. "You're not actually mad, are you? You embarrassed Adrian during a meeting. You practically called him incompetent." "Because he is incompetent," I said. "You know that better than anyone. You divorced him." Her jaw tightened. "That's not the point, Mason. He's trying to rebuild his career. You don't have to make it harder." I smiled. "I didn't. You did." She sighed and looked away. "You know, sometimes I think you don't understand how corporate politics work." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "I just don't play checkers with people who think they're playing chess." She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." "Me? Never," I said, leaning against the counter. "But hey, thanks for the public character assassination today. It really added some flavor to my Thursday." She took another sip of wine, clearly realizing this wasn't going to end in a hug. "You could just apologize, Mason. It would make things easier." "For who?" I asked. "You, him, the HR department that's already drafting a memo titled, 'When Spouses Work Together, a Cautionary Tale'?" "Mason," I put my beer down and smiled faintly. "You know what? You're right. Maybe I should apologize." Her face softened. "Really?" "Yeah," I said. "Tomorrow morning, publicly." She exhaled, relieved. "Good, that's all I'm asking." "Of course," I said, walking past her toward the stairs. "You'll get your apology." What she didn't realize was that my version of an apology doesn't come with tears and groveling. It comes with strategy. It comes with silence, paperwork, and a smile that says you should have known better. That night, while she scrolled through her phone in bed, probably texting her friends about how she handled the situation professionally, I was in the study revisiting old files, contracts, archives, system diagrams. My insurance policy. The kind of paperwork that makes or breaks empires. As I flipped through an old digital folder labeled Consulting Agreement, Legacy Systems, a grin crept across my face. Clause 9B. It was still there? My secret ace. I leaned back in my chair, sipping what was left of my beer, and whispered to myself, "Congratulations, Jenna. You just lit the fuse." There's a specific smell offices get when politics start rotting the air, like burnt toner and silent resentment. It had been 4 days since Jenna's little performance at the all-hands meeting, and people were still whispering like middle schoolers in detention. I couldn't walk to the coffee machine without catching fragments of gossip floating through the cubicle jungle. Did you see how calm he was? Maybe they're fighting at home. I heard she made him sleep in the guest room. Oh, the drama. If this place ever went under, it could survive another decade, just selling its gossip as reality TV. Adrian, my wife's ex and my newly self-appointed supervisor, had officially returned to strategic consulting, which is corporate speak for, let's pretend this guy still matters. He'd somehow convinced upper management that his catastrophic system redesign was ahead of its time, which in Adrian language meant, it still doesn't work, but I found better synonyms. He strutted into every meeting like he owned the building, all smiles and cologne strong enough to knock out a small horse. His PowerPoint slides had gradient backgrounds, motivational quotes, and exactly zero substance. My favorite was the one titled The Future of Integration, a holistic approach to team resilience. Spoiler alert, it was 12 slides of circles and arrows pointing to nothing. Meanwhile, Jenna was all business. No pet names, no casual, hey babe, not even a smirk. She'd gone full CFO mode. Emails with per my last message, calendar invites labeled urgent alignment, and meetings that felt like cross-examinations. We used to talk about vacation plans. Now we discussed budget variances. I wasn't sleeping next to my wife anymore. I was sleeping next to the company's risk management strategy. On Tuesday morning, I arrived early, mostly to enjoy 10 minutes of silence before the circus began. I grabbed a cup of the world's saddest coffee, sat at my desk, and opened my inbox to find 36 unread emails. 20 of them were from Adrian. Subject lines like audit workflow alignment, follow-up on follow-up, touching base on yesterday's touch base. I swear this man could write a novel about nothing and still CC half the company. I clicked one open and nearly laughed out loud. Hey, Mason. Just looping back on our ongoing collaboration. I noticed your risk flag parameters don't match our new operational philosophy. Let's recalibrate our synergy moving forward. Operational philosophy. The man was talking about code and using words better suited for a yoga retreat. I replied, hey, Adrian, thanks for flagging that. I'll make sure my parameters align with your evolving spiritual journey. Then I hit send and took a long, satisfied sip of coffee. By 9:30 a.m., the day's first meeting began. Jenna had called it an interdepartmental transparency sync, which, if you speak corporate, translates to mandatory group therapy session. The entire compliance department crammed into conference room B, where the thermostat was permanently stuck between sauna and freezer burn. Adrian stood at the head of the table like a motivational speaker who'd lost his audience years ago. Morning, team, he chirped, clapping his hands. Before we dive in, I just want to acknowledge the great progress we've made bridging departmental silos. Translation. He wanted credit for something he didn't do. Jenna sat next to him, tablet in hand, pretending to take notes, but mostly keeping her eyes on me like she was studying a particularly uncooperative science experiment. Adrian clicked to his first slide, a stock photo of people high-fiving. Let's talk about emotional alignment and compliance, he said. I nearly choked on my coffee. Emotional alignment? He smiled like a man who'd read half a self-help book and decided he was Gandhi. Yes, we're all people before we're employees. If we can connect emotionally, we can build trust, and trust leads to better audits. Right, I said, leaning forward, because nothing says trust like a surprise HR meeting. A few people snorted. Adrian ignored it. And to demonstrate this, Jenna and I are going to lead a quick exercise. Now, if you've never seen your wife and her ex lead a corporate team-building exercise, congratulations. You've probably made better life choices than I have. Let's do something fun, Adrian said, grinning like a man seconds away from being punched. Everyone pair up with a coworker and share one professional insecurity and one personal strength. He looked right at me. Mason, why don't you start with me? Of course that he wanted that. I smiled. Sure thing, boss. We faced each other across the table like duelists. The room was dead silent, except for the hum of the overhead lights. My professional insecurity, I said. I sometimes worry about working under leadership that doesn't understand basic compliance frameworks. A few people coughed to hide their laughter. Jenna pinched the bridge of her nose. Adrian, visibly trying to stay zen, forced a smile. Okay, and your personal strength? I leaned back. Patience. That got an actual laugh from the back. Adrian's smile cracked for half a second before he plastered it back on. Good one, he said through his teeth. My professional insecurity is I can be too visionary, and my personal strength is emotional intelligence. I nodded seriously. Interesting. I would have gone with creative resilience and selective memory, but sure. Jenna finally cut in. Okay, that's enough. Let's move on. The rest of the meeting went downhill fast. Adrian tried to present his new audit collaboration framework, which was just my old system rebranded with new colors and worse functionality. Every time he stumbled through an explanation, Jenna jumped in to smooth it over like she was protecting a fragile intern instead of her ex-husband. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. My silence was doing all the heavy lifting. When the meeting ended, people scattered like pigeons after fireworks. Adrian stayed behind, pretending to pack up slowly. Jenna lingered too, obviously waiting for the post-meeting talk. Mason, Adrian said finally, you were a little sharp back there. We're trying to foster positivity. I smiled. That's what I was doing. I felt very positive about being honest. He sighed. Look, I know this is weird, but we're professionals. We can rise above personal history. Couldn't agree more, I said, grabbing my notebook. You start. Jenna exhaled loudly. You two sound like children. I raised an eyebrow. You made me report to your ex, Jenna. I'm already living in an HR case study. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Just try to be civil. Always am, I said, heading for the door. Back at my desk, I found another email waiting from her. Not from Jenna, my wife. From J.L. Thompson, CFO. Mason, please ensure all your current documentation aligns with Adrian's consulting revisions by Friday. We'll be reviewing team adaptability metrics next week. Team adaptability metrics. That's CFO code for I'm testing your compliance through passive-aggressive paperwork. I replied, understood, copying HR for visibility. It's amazing how fast an HRCC can change someone's tone. The next 2 days were an absurd circus of fake smiles and overcompensating professionalism. Adrian started dropping by my desk uninvited, using phrases like quick sync and collaboration culture. He'd lean against the cubicle wall like he was in a sitcom, sipping from his company mug with the words, "Innovation starts with you" printed on it. Hey man, he'd say, just checking if we're aligned. Oh, we're aligned, I'd reply. You're facing north, I'm facing the exit. By Thursday afternoon, I was done pretending. During a review session, he proudly showcased a new code model that was literally my design from 6 months ago, copy-pasted and renamed Fosterflow 2.0, the nerve. Everyone nodded politely, pretending not to notice. I watched in silence, arms folded and sipping my coffee. When he finished his speech, he looked at me expectantly. So Mason, thoughts? I smiled. Yeah, I think plagiarism is the sincerest form of flattery. The room went silent. Jenna shot me a death glare. Adrian's smile twitched. You're funny, he said, voice tight. Thanks. Mine, I said. It's a coping mechanism. After the meeting, Jenna cornered me in the hallway. You're pushing it, she hissed. I'm not pushing anything, I said. I'm just adapting, per your last message. She groaned. You're impossible. Yeah, I said, walking past her. That's why you married me. Twice the entertainment, half the meetings. That night, we sat through dinner in silence. She scrolled through her phone while I replayed every conversation of the day in my head, each one confirming what I already knew. This wasn't just office politics anymore. This was a marital Cold War disguised as quarterly alignment. When she finally looked up, she said, Adrian thinks you're undermining him. I almost laughed. I don't need to undermine him, Jenna. He's doing that all by himself. She shook her head. You can't keep doing this. You're making me look bad. Sweetheart, I said, pushing my plate away. You made yourself look bad the moment you asked your husband to apologize to his replacement. She didn't respond, just got up and walked upstairs, leaving her wine half finished. I cleaned the table quietly, poured myself another drink, and looked out the window at the dark city skyline. My reflection in the glass looked tired, sure, but amused. Because even as the office descended into chaos, I wasn't panicking. See, the beauty of corporate warfare is that everyone thinks they're the hero until the paperwork says otherwise, and me, I wasn't done yet. Friday morning began like every other exercise in corporate self-delusion. Lukewarm coffee, a calendar full of meetings that could have been emails, and an inbox screaming for attention like a toddler with an iPad. I'd barely sat down when the company-wide Zoom invite popped up on my screen. Mandatory all hands, hosted by CFO Jenna Thompson. The subject line already smelled like drama. Mandatory, hosted by my wife, at 9 a.m. on a Friday? That wasn't an update. That was a public execution with better lighting. I texted my coworker, Ryan, from IT, me. She's doing it, huh? Ryan. Yup, HR brought donuts. That's how you know it's bad. I sighed, closed the spreadsheet I'd been pretending to work on, and joined the call. 200 tiny faces appeared, tiled across my monitor like a digital hostage lineup. Some had cameras off, others were pretending to type, and a few had that glazed, I'm mentally on Indeed.com expression. Jenna appeared in the center box, perfectly framed, hair immaculate, that CFO calm plastered on like a PR stunt. Good morning, everyone, she said brightly, voice smooth enough to butter toast. I appreciate you joining on such short notice. Oh, here we go. Adrian's face hovered beside hers, beaming like a proud intern who had just discovered the share screen button. He wore a navy blazer that screamed, I practiced this speech in the mirror. Jenna continued, as you all know, we've been working on reestablishing a culture of collaboration after recent tensions. Tensions. I almost spit out my coffee. Tensions is what you call a bad Wi-Fi signal. Not your CFO publicly disciplining her husband because her ex couldn't follow basic compliance procedure. She clicked to the next slide, a company stock photo of smiling employees around a whiteboard, the kind of picture that smells like unpaid overtime. Now, I wanted to address an internal concern regarding leadership behavior. Someone in the chat wrote, oh boy. She looked directly into the camera, at me. It's been brought to my attention that certain individuals have been creating a culture of fear and inflexibility. The room, or rather, the entire digital hive, went silent. You could feel 200 people holding their breath. While technical excellence is important, she continued, team harmony is equally vital. When feedback becomes confrontation and collaboration turns into control, we all lose. I took another slow sip of coffee. Classic. Corporate translation, we're not mad you fixed the system, we're mad you made us feel stupid about it. Then came the dagger. Effective immediately, she said. Mason will be removed from oversight of all ongoing compliance audits until further review. My Slack blew up instantly. Private messages flooding in. Dude, what did you do? Are you okay? You need a lawyer? Adrian, ever the opportunist, leaned forward with that condescending smile he must have practiced during his divorce hearings. To clarify, he added, this isn't punitive. It's about promoting a safe and creative work environment. Safe and creative. Yeah, because nothing screams creativity like firing the guy who kept your company from a federal fine. My screen lit up with faces pretending to look sympathetic while secretly loving the drama. HR blinked so hard I thought her webcam froze. Even the CEO's little window flickered, probably debating whether to step in or grab popcorn. Jenna clasped her hands, waiting for my reaction. The moment hung heavy, awkward, almost cinematic. She expected me to argue, to unmute, defend myself, make it messy. That's what everyone wanted. The fireworks, the scandal, the emotional confession. Instead, I smiled. Just slightly. Then I unmuted. Okay. One word, calm, polite, and lethal. 200 faces froze. Adrian's smile twitched like a dying battery. Jenna blinked twice, thrown completely off script. Sorry, she asked, voice trembling just a little. You're right, I said evenly. Culture's important. Please proceed. Then, without another word, I clicked leave meeting. Boom. Gone. No mic drop, no outburst, just silence. The digital equivalent of walking off stage and letting the applause die awkwardly. My phone buzzed immediately. Ryan messaged me again. Ryan. Bro, you just ended the internet. Me. Nah, just optimizing system efficiency. I stood up, stretched, and looked out the window. Outside, the city hummed. Car horns, distant sirens, the usual Friday chaos. It felt poetic. While the company combusted in HR-approved language, I had peace and an iced coffee. Within 10 minutes, my inbox exploded. Emails from Jenna, HR, the CEO, Even the company lawyer, Melissa. Subject lines like urgent, please respond, and let's clarify communication protocol. I didn't open a single one. Let them sweat. Silence was the most underrated weapon in business. It forces everyone else to narrate your motives. By lunch, the rumor mill was spinning so fast it could have powered the server room. I overheard snippets as I walked past the break area. Did you see him just leave? Apparently he's resigning. No, so I heard he's suing. Wait, he's married to the CFO? Yeah, some of them didn't even know. Corporate America, where people you've worked with for 3 years don't know you're married to upper management, but they can quote your Slack emojis. Around 1 p.m., I finally checked my phone. Jenna had texted. Jenna, what was that? You embarrassed me in front of the entire company? Me. Sorry, I thought we were promoting transparency. No reply. At 2:30, she called. I didn't pick up. Then she called again. Finally, I answered on the third ring just to enjoy the suspense. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. You can't just log off a company meeting like that. Sure I can, I said. I clicked a button. Mason, be serious. I am serious, I said. You wanted an apology. You got acknowledgement. That's practically the same thing in corporate language. She sighed, frustrated. You're impossible. Thanks, I said. Put it in my performance review. Click. I went back to my desk, humming softly, pulling up some old files. Not work files, my own archives. Things I'd kept from my early consulting days when this company was a two-room startup run by caffeine and delusion. Back then, I'd built the backbone of the system. The compliance engines, the audit triggers, the security protocols, the kind of code that makes or breaks billion-dollar acquisitions. And somewhere in that dusty contract folder, I remembered a particular clause. Something I'd written when I was young, paranoid, and legally creative. But I wasn't ready to touch that card yet. Not until they played theirs first. By evening, the entire office had descended into chaos. Someone leaked the Zoom recording. It was already circulating on the company chat channels under the name CFO versus Husband, Dawn of Compliance. HR tried to delete it, but you can't stop the internet once it smells scandal. My phone buzzed again. Ryan calling this time. Dude, he said between laughs, you went viral internally. They're making memes. One's got your face over Thanos saying, okay. Accurate, I said. Perfectly balanced. He snorted. You're insane. Maybe, but I'm also unemployed for the weekend. Man, he said, lowering his voice. You sure you want to poke that bear? Jenna's furious. Good, I said. Means she's predictable. After hanging up, I made dinner, steak, medium rare, because I deserved something satisfying. Jenna didn't come home until late. When she walked in, she looked exhausted. Her power bun, now a war crime. Do you have any idea what you've done? She snapped. Yeah, I said calmly, slicing into my steak. I saved myself a meeting. This isn't funny, Mason. The CEO wants answers, the board's asking questions, HR is threatening to mediate. Perfect, I said. Maybe they'll finally learn what mediation actually means. She threw her bag onto the couch. Why can't you just cooperate for once? Because, I said, looking up, I'm not the one who turned our marriage into a management case study. Her eyes flashed. You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself, I said, tone still even. All I did was stop participating. For a second, she said nothing, then softer. You're going to regret this. Maybe, I said, finishing my bite. But not tonight. She stormed upstairs without another word. I waited until I heard the bedroom door slam before pulling out my laptop again. If the morning had been humiliation, the night was clarity. I wasn't just angry, I was awake. I'd played by corporate rules too long. Polite, deferential, logical. But the game was rigged. People like Adrian failed upward, while people like me cleaned the mess quietly in the dark. No more. I typed a few lines of code, disabling some back-end redundancies, not destructive, just delicate edits. The kind of changes no one notices until they matter. Then I saved everything to an encrypted drive labeled DRK Core. A little inside joke. When I shut the laptop, I felt lighter. Peaceful, even. Let them think they'd won. Let them print memos and whisper about damage control. Monday would come soon enough. And with it, consequences. Because in corporate America, silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of a plan taking shape. And me, I was done talking. You ever have one of those mornings where you wake up and realize the storm you caused is now trending on Slack? That was me on Monday. I opened my laptop, and before the login screen even blinked, my phone buzzed nonstop. Emails, messages, notifications. The company hadn't just imploded, it had turned into a full-blown corporate opera. HR sent a reminder about professionalism. The CEO sent a "we value every voice" email that sounded suspiciously like damage control. Even Adrian, the ex-husband turned consultant turned peacock in a blazer, had sent me a "no hard feelings" note, complete with an emoji handshake, because nothing says maturity like passive-aggressive clip art. And I wasn't angry. Oh no, I was calm, dangerously calm. Because that kind of chaos meant one thing: they'd finally stepped exactly where I wanted them. 19 years ago, back when this company was called Delta Financial Tech and ran out of a secondhand office above a nail salon, I'd been one of the original architects. Just me, a couple of developers, and a whiteboard that smelled like regret. We'd built the audit systems from scratch, line by painful line of code, duct taped together with caffeine and paranoia. And because I didn't trust anyone, least of all the founders, who thought legal review meant asking their cousin who'd once watched Suits, I'd written a few protective clauses into my consulting agreement. Nothing dramatic, just insurance. The kind of thing people overlook because they assume the nerd writing it is harmless. Clause 9b. That was my secret weapon. Buried in 4 pages of boring legal jargon, it read, "In the event of termination without cause, all derivative systems remain property of the consultant." Translation: if they ever tried to remove me unfairly, I owned the bones of the company's tech stack. Every script, every compliance tool, every data model, mine. They could fire me, sure, but they couldn't use the system I built without paying for it. I'd written it back when the company had no legal department, and no one read anything past page 2. 18 years later, it was the digital equivalent of a loaded gun gathering dust in the basement. And after Friday's little public humiliation, I figured it was time to start polishing the barrel. I logged into my old archives, encrypted, of course. And there it was. My original contract, timestamped, digitally signed, notarized. I even had the original email thread, where the founder approved it with a thumbs-up emoji. Classic startup energy. I couldn't help but grin. The beauty of a long career in tech is that people forget you were there before the rebranding, before the mergers, before the shiny logo. They forget you built the engine while they were still learning how to buckle their seatbelts. So while Jenna was upstairs in our home office, probably FaceTiming Adrian about strategic messaging, I was in the living room, laptop open, resurrecting a ghost. I spent hours cross-referencing code versions, system logs, and IP ownership trails. Every keystroke was therapy. Every timestamp was vindication. My music playlist? Lo-fi beats for lawful revenge. By 1 p.m., I had a complete record showing that 90% of the current compliance infrastructure, yes, the same one Adrian bragged about reimagining, was a derivative of my original framework. My name sat quietly in the metadata of every core file like a digital signature that never sleeps. That meant Clause 9b wasn't just a bluff. It was ironclad. Around 2 p.m., Jenna shouted from upstairs, "Mason, can you hop on a quick call? The CEO wants to discuss Friday's incident." Ah, the incident. The corporate euphemism for train wreck we caused but want you to fix politely. I joined the Zoom call. On screen were Jenna, the CEO, HR's favorite emotionless mannequin, and Adrian, smirking like he'd just been promoted to class president. "Good afternoon, Mason," the CEO began. "We wanted to clear the air after Friday's unfortunate situation." I nodded. "Sure, let's clear it." "Mason," Jenna said, professional tone fully loaded, "the company feels your reaction was disproportionate." I raised an eyebrow. "To being publicly reprimanded for doing my job correctly?" Adrian jumped in, smiling that patronizing smile. "Hey man, we're not blaming you. It's just tone matters. You could have handled it with a bit more empathy." "Empathy," I repeated. "For the guy who almost crashed our audit system?" He chuckled awkwardly. "We're all learning." I leaned forward. That's true. For example, I'm learning how much patience I have for corporate hypocrisy." The CEO cleared his throat. "Mason, let's stay constructive. We'd like to move forward, but we need your cooperation to ensure a smooth transition." Transition, I asked. To what? To new leadership on the compliance side, Jenna said carefully. There it was, the soft corporate breakup. It's not you, it's structure. I smiled slowly. So, let me get this straight. You're removing me from oversight based on a public accusation with no documented cause? The CEO hesitated. Let's not use words like removal. Think of it as reallocation. I leaned back. Got it. So, termination without cause. Jenna frowned. No one said termination. Right, I said, keeping my tone easy. Just confirming for my notes. They exchanged looks. HR scribbled something in her notebook. Adrian sipped his water, probably trying not to choke on irony. Anything else? I asked. The CEO forced a smile. We'll have HR follow up with the necessary documents. Perfect, I said. Please do. And just like that, I ended the call, before they could say another word. The second I closed my laptop, I exhaled. Calm, measured, triumphant. They thought they'd boxed me out. They had no idea they just pulled the trigger on Clause 9B. That night, Jenna acted like everything was fine. She poured herself a glass of wine and talked about investor calls, dinner reservations, quarterly updates. I nodded, smiled, played along. Every marriage has its rhythms. Ours just happened to alternate between romance and legal chess. After she went upstairs, I stayed up late reviewing system access logs. There it was, the telltale sign of arrogance. Adrian had rebranded one of my frameworks under his own consultant account. Audit Core V9 was now Fosterflow 2.0. Cute. I opened the server portal, scrolled down, and smiled when I saw the fine print. See, proprietary module, licensed to Mason Drake Consulting, LLC. The man had just stolen something I legally owned and used it in a corporate environment that had technically terminated me without cause. The poetry of it was almost beautiful. At midnight, I drafted a short email. To legal@deltatech.com. Subject: Inquiry regarding IP ownership of derivative compliance systems. Hello. As per my original 2006 consulting agreement, attached, I retain ownership of derivative systems developed under Audit Core V9 architecture. Recent company activities appear to be utilizing said framework without renewed licensing. Please confirm authorization. Regards, Mason Drake. Founder, Drake Core Systems, LLC. I hit send and smiled. At exactly 12:04 a.m., I received the automatic response. Your message has been received. Legal will review within 3-5 business days. Translation: they'd start panicking by Wednesday. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't angry anymore. I was in that rare, golden stage of revenge where patience becomes power. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to fight. The paperwork would do the talking. And the best part? Jenna didn't even know. She still thought she was holding the leash. CFO, queen of the spreadsheets, married to the man she'd publicly disciplined like an intern. She'd find out soon enough that she'd married the system she'd just tried to dismantle. Before heading to bed, I poured one last drink and toasted to the quiet brilliance of fine print. Clause 9B, my silent accomplice. The fuse was lit. The thing about corporate explosions is that nobody ever hears the first click. It's always quiet, too quiet. One day you're in a meeting arguing about brand synergy. The next, your entire infrastructure's eating itself alive. My plan wasn't about revenge. Not really, it was about control. I'd lost that the moment my CFO, decided to turn a company meeting into a marital firing squad. Now I was taking it back, one silent keystroke at a time. That Friday night, the office was dark except for the pale glow from my monitor. Jenna was upstairs in her home office, FaceTiming her executive circle, which was just code for her wine-drinking therapy group. They all spoke in those self-help mantras like, you have to own your narrative, and remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. Meanwhile, I was downstairs owning my narrative by disabling license keys. I didn't delete anything. I'm not a monster. I just let a few systems expire. A graceful shutdown. No alarms, no chaos, just quiet expiration dates slipping into the digital night. People underestimate how much of a company runs on assumptions. They assume passwords never change, backups always restore, and compliance tools hum eternally in the background. Me? I was the guy who built those assumptions into existence. So all I had to do was let them rest. I sat there in the faint hum of server fans, sipping coffee gone cold, printing out my resignation letter. A simple 3-sentence masterpiece of politeness. Dear Jenna, effective immediately, I resign from my position. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute. Best, Mason Drake. The smiley face wasn't professionalism. It was sarcasm, bound in Times New Roman, a digital wink for whoever found it first. I signed it, slid it into an envelope, and left it on my spotless desk. Upstairs, I heard laughter, the glass clinking kind. I imagined her telling her friends how she'd handled the Mason situation, probably describing me like a stubborn intern she finally disciplined. I smiled at the thought. They had no clue the intern just owned their infrastructure. By midnight, I'd scrubbed every trace of personal data from the system, transferred the core repositories to a secure cloud under my LLC, and revoked all active licenses tied to my name. Not maliciously, legally. Clause 9b wasn't revenge, it was maintenance. They could still function, sort of. They just wouldn't know why everything suddenly needed my permission to breathe. I powered down the monitor, stretched, and caught my reflection in the glass. The look on my face wasn't anger. It was satisfaction mixed with caffeine withdrawal. I went to bed early for the first time in weeks. Jenna thought I was sulking. In reality, I was waiting for Monday morning, 9 a.m., a more satisfying alarm clock than any sunrise. Saturday passed quietly. Jenna spent most of it pretending to work while subtly checking if I'd apologized yet. She floated by my desk once, wine glass in hand, scanning the empty surface where my laptop used to sit. You're not coming to the investor brunch tomorrow? I didn't even look up from my book. Wouldn't miss it, I said. Good, she said too quickly. Because Adrian will be presenting, and it'd look bad if you... Don't worry, I said. I'll be the picture of professionalism. She smiled, satisfied, not realizing that the picture I had in mind was me walking out of the frame entirely. Sunday evening, I cooked dinner, steak, garlic potatoes, wine for her, whiskey for me. Domestic calm before corporate Armageddon. She seemed lighter, like she'd already rewritten the narrative in her head. The big dramatic scene from last week was just one of those moments, something she could file away as character growth in her imaginary TED Talk. Halfway through dinner, she said, You know, Mason, I think things are getting better. Adrian said the board's impressed with how I handled everything. I almost laughed. Impressed, I said, chewing slowly. Yeah, that's one word for it. She smiled proudly. See, it's all smoothing out. I nodded. It will be, eventually. She missed the tone entirely. That night, while she watched some mind-numbing Netflix reality show upstairs, I made one last adjustment. A single delayed trigger in the license database. A timed expiration that would quietly deactivate their high-tier compliance dashboard Monday morning. Not enough to destroy anything, just enough to make it clear who'd really been running the show. Then, I closed the laptop for good. The soft click felt like a punctuation mark. Monday, 8:59 a.m. The office was buzzing with artificial confidence. Jenna walked into the building wearing her favorite victory heels, the kind that made her sound like a small army approaching. Adrian trailed behind, clutching a stack of printouts he'd definitely made just for show. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock sharp. I wasn't there. I was at home, in sweats, bowl of cereal in hand, watching the internal company live stream through a backdoor feed I'd built years ago for diagnostic purposes. Jenna opened the meeting with a bright PR-approved smile. Good morning, team. I know last week was challenging, but I'm proud to say we're moving forward stronger than ever. Someone off camera sneezed. Foreshadowing, probably. Adrian stepped up next, clicking his little remote like he was launching the next iPhone. Thanks, Jenna. Today, I'll be demonstrating our updated compliance dashboards, streamlined for maximum efficiency and transparency. He turned to the projector. As you can see here, blank screen. He clicked again. Nothing. The audience shifted. Jenna frowned. Adrian laughed nervously. Technical glitch, he said. AT, can you... Already checking, came a voice from the back, panicked. The screens behind him flickered like dying fluorescent lights. Then, one by one, the dashboards vanished, replaced by error messages. License invalid. Contact administrator. Adrian's smile froze. Jenna turned pale. The CEO leaned forward, whispering something off mic. Adrian stammered, it's a temporary issue, just a network hiccup. He tried to open the investor portal next. Same message, access revoked. Contact Drake Core Systems. At home, I poured another bowl of cereal. The meeting descended into chaos. People started whispering. It ran around rebooting things. The CFO's composure cracked like bad porcelain. Adrian fumbled through excuses, claiming legacy software interference. Jenna finally snapped, slamming her hand on the podium. Get Mason on the phone, now! Oh, sweetheart, you already did. You just didn't know which phone line I answered. By 10:15, my personal phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a text. Jenna, system's down. Please respond. This isn't funny. Me. Funny? No. Educational? Definitely. 5 dots appeared, then vanished. She was typing, deleting, typing again. I could practically feel the panic vibrating through the airwaves. Another text came through, this one from Adrian. Adrian, hey man, we're in a bit of a jam. Can you jump on a quick call? Me. Sorry, I'm off the project. It felt poetic. By noon, my inbox exploded with emails from corporate. Urgent. Critical. Mason, we need your expertise. I didn't respond to any of them. I wasn't being petty. I was simply respecting boundaries, the ones they'd so enthusiastically enforced. Around 3 p.m., I took a long walk around the neighborhood. The weather was perfect. Blue sky, soft breeze. The kind of day that makes you realize peace isn't about forgiveness. It's about distance. When I came back, I brewed coffee, sat on the porch, and watched the chaos unfold via company Slack leaks. Screenshots, frantic messages. Employees joking that the ghosts of IT past are haunting us. By 5 p.m., Jenna's tone had shifted from fury to desperation. Jenna, can we talk privately? Please. Me. Sure. Send a calendar invite through your system. No reply. Later that night, she came home. Not the confident CFO anymore, just a woman whose empire was slipping through her manicured fingers. She dropped her bag by the door and looked at me like I was a fire she couldn't figure out how to put out. Mason, she said softly, what did you do? I set down my coffee. I resigned. You disabled the systems. I disabled my systems, I corrected. Big difference. You can't just Clause 9B. I said, calm as ever. Look it up. She blinked. What clause? The one you never read. Her face went blank, the way it does when realization lands like a falling piano. You're saying you own the bones, I finished for her. Every audit engine, every compliance database, every derivative module. I built the skeleton, Jenna. You just dressed it up in designer suits. She sank onto the couch, silent for once. I stood, stretched, and said, don't worry, I didn't break anything. I just reminded you who built it. Then I walked past her to the door. You should probably tell Adrian to stop presenting dashboards that don't exist. She whispered something I didn't catch. Maybe an apology, maybe disbelief. Either way, I didn't stop to listen. Outside, the air felt crisp and clean. Freedom always smells like coffee and server dust. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even smug. Just done. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't a scandal or a scream, it's a quiet exit signed with a smiley face. Monday mornings are supposed to start with bad coffee and fake smiles, not panic calls from the CFO's office. But when your wife's ex is running the show on a system you legally own, the universe tends to reward irony. At precisely 7:43 a.m., my phone started buzzing like a nest of angry bees. The company hotline, my personal line, even LinkedIn messages, every platform screaming some version of help. I ignored them all, letting the chaos marinate. Nothing makes executives sweat like silence. By 8 o'clock, I was eating cereal on my couch, watching the storm unfold on my private admin dashboard. Not to brag, but it was cinematic. Error alerts flashing like fireworks, database clusters stalling, compliance bots begging for missing credentials. My masterpiece of controlled failure. The best part? Everything was reversible. I hadn't destroyed a thing. I'd simply withheld permission, like a landlord changing the locks on a tenant who forgot they don't actually own the building. At 8:15, I got a text from my friend Ryan in ET. Ryan, dude, the network's melting. Dashboard's being and blank. CEO's screaming, Adrian's crying. Me. Crying, or corporate crying. Ryan. He's in the bathroom with his blazer off, so real crying. I couldn't help but laugh. Adrian, Mr. Synergy himself, reduced to a puddle of panic while I sat in my pajamas spooning frosted flakes. Karma was punctual today. By 8:30, the internal Slack channels were chaos incarnate. Someone posted a screenshot. License error. Contact administrator. Drake Core Systems, LLC. My old logo. Still there. Still smug. At 9 o'clock sharp, Jenna's number lit up my phone again. I answered this time, mostly because curiosity's a hell of a drug. Her voice was pure caffeine and desperation. Mason, what the hell did you do? Good morning to you too, I said. The entire system's offline, she snapped. Investors are calling, the CEO's threatening to pull contracts, and Adrian, let me guess, I said. He's presenting graphs that don't exist? This isn't funny, she hissed. Of course it's not funny, I said. It's tragic. A company this size crippled because nobody read Clause 9B. Someone should have hired better lawyers. Mason, she said, voice softening just enough to sound rehearsed. You made your point. Now please fix this before it ruins us. Ruins you, I corrected. I'm fine. She exhaled shakily. Please. I'm asking you as your wife. Wife, I said. Interesting choice of word after last week's meeting. Which role are you using? CFO or spouse? Mason, tell you what, I interrupted, setting down my cereal. I'll consider it if you make a public statement acknowledging that I own the Drake Core framework. I don't even need an apology, just truth. She hesitated. That's impossible. Then so is your login, I said and hung up. Silence. Sweet, liberating silence. I opened my laptop and watched the chaos unfold like the world's most satisfying live feed. The CEO's admin console was flashing unauthorized. The investors' dashboards displayed service suspended. It was in meltdown, rebooting servers like a defibrillator with no heart to revive. And Adrian, oh, poor Adrian, was in a meeting trying to manually explain data trends he couldn't access. Ryan sent another update. Ryan, bro, he tried to draw the graphs by hand on a whiteboard. Me. Art therapy. I almost felt bad, almost. By 9:30, my email inbox overflowed with messages titled Urgent. The CEO himself sent one that began with Mr. Drake instead of Hey Mason. That's when you know they're scared. They switched to formality from CEO, Prime Union Holdings. Subject, immediate assistance requested Mason. It appears our systems have encountered a serious licensing issue. We believe this may relate to your legacy infrastructure. Please contact me immediately so we can resolve this amicably. Regards, Douglas P. Henley. Amicably. Corporate for before I call my lawyer. I poured another cup of coffee, cracked my knuckles, and replied, from Mason Drake to Douglas P. Henley. Subject, immediate assistance requested, Douglas. I'd be happy to assist. However, as the rightful license holder of the Drake Core framework, see attached contract clause 9B, my consulting services would need to be re-engaged under standard vendor terms. Please have legal contact my office to discuss retainer options. Warm regards. Mason Drake, founder. Drake Core Systems, LLC. I hit send and took a long sip of coffee. That was my version of lighting a cigar after a clean job. At 10 o'clock, Jenna called again. I ignored it. Then she called from her office phone. I ignored that, too. She tried email next. Subject, please. Inside one line. They're blaming me. For a second, just a second, I felt something. Not guilt exactly, but nostalgia. I remembered the woman I married before she became the company. Back when she laughed without spreadsheets and kissed me without scheduling it. Then I remembered her standing in that meeting room shouting, "You're off the project until you apologize to my ex-husband." Yeah, sympathy deleted. Around 11 Ryan texted again. Ryan, Bro, HR just sent out a company-wide memo saying we're experiencing temporary technical adjustments. Man, and corporate translation, we're screwed, but don't panic. Ryan, people are panicking. Me, good. By noon, Bloomberg-level panic had set in. The compliance team couldn't access investor data. The audit files were frozen. The automated report system was spitting out error codes like a broken slot machine. Adrian tried rebooting a server manually, which is kind of like trying to perform brain surgery with a spoon. Jenna's third text of the day came through at 12:47. Jenna, the CEO's threatening to fire me. Please, Mason, I'll fix this with you privately. Me, send me the statement. Jenna, what statement? Me, acknowledging ownership, Drake Core, Clause 9B. You remember. Jenna, you're blackmailing me. No, I'm invoicing you. At 1:30, the company lawyer, Melissa, called me directly. She sounded winded, like she'd sprinted through 5 meetings and 2 existential crises. Mason, hi, it's Melissa from legal, she said, her tone trying to stay professional but cracking around the edges. We're reviewing the contract and, well, it appears Clause 9B is indeed enforceable. Appear, I said. It's notarized, time-stamped, and signed by your founder. Yeah, she sighed. Technically, you own the framework. Technically? I repeated. You're welcome to test that theory in court. She exhaled audibly. Can we discuss a buyout? Sure, I said casually, but my rates have gone up. Supply and demand, you know. She groaned. I'll get back to you. Take your time, I said. You've got about, 0 system access left. By mid-afternoon, the company was hemorrhaging productivity like a sitcom with no writers. The CEO was on the verge of a breakdown. Investors were threatening to pull out. And the internal network chat looked like a therapy session. Meanwhile, I was sitting on my porch, laptop balanced on my knees, watching the chaos from my back-end view. I didn't need popcorn. Their Slack logs were entertainment enough. Then, around 3:45, Jenna showed up at the house. She didn't even knock, just stormed in, heels clicking like tiny gunshots. You need to stop this, she said, standing in the doorway, chest heaving. They're about to shut down operations. I told you, I said calmly, not even looking up from my laptop. I didn't break anything. She crossed her arms. You crippled us. I paused your subscription, I corrected. You can resume any time, just need to sign the vendor agreement. She glared. You're enjoying this. I looked up finally, met her eyes. Not enjoying, just appreciating accountability. It's rare these days. She sank into the armchair opposite me, her entire posture deflating. They're going to fire Adrian. I'll send flowers. Her voice softened. And me. Actions have consequences? I said, echoing the line she'd used on me once, remember? She didn't respond, just stared at the floor. After a long silence, she whispered, You win? I leaned back, tilting my head. It's not a game, Jenna. It's business. The part you always forgot. For the first time in weeks, she didn't have a comeback. No corporate buzzwords, no damage control jargon, just quiet. After she left, I reopened my email and saw a new message from the CEO. Subject, contract negotiation, Mason. We'd like to retain Drake Core Systems immediately. Legal is drafting a new consulting agreement. Expect payment terms within the hour. Respectfully, Douglas P. Henley. I smiled. Respectfully. That's corporate for we surrender. By 6:00 p.m., my bank app pinged with a deposit notification. An obscene consulting retainer, paid in full. The same company that publicly humiliated me was now paying me to fix the mess they created. Adrian? Reassigned to strategic ideation. Translation. No duties, no access, no future. Jenna? Suspended pending internal review. HR called it temporary leave to ensure objectivity. I called it karma on PTO. As the sun dipped below the skyline, I closed my laptop and poured a whiskey. For the first time in years, the world felt balanced. You could call it revenge, and I called it realignment. The company got their lesson, Jenna got her reckoning, and I got my piece, plus a very comfortable retainer. And the best part, I didn't raise my voice once, because in corporate America, the loudest power move is silence and a well-timed invoice. There's a distinct kind of silence that only happens after corporate disaster. A heavy, buzzing quiet where everyone pretends to be working while secretly updating their resumes. You could feel it through the walls of Prime Union's glass tower that Tuesday morning. The air conditioning hummed, keyboards clicked like guilty confessions, and somewhere deep inside the building, a printer jammed dramatically, as if protesting the incompetence surrounding it. By 9:15 p.m., Jenna's name was trending on the internal Slack board. Not officially, of course, but through coded messages. Anyone heard from finance? CFO not in yet. Should we even submit the Q3 review? Translation. Is the queen dethroned? She was still on leave, which in corporate language meant the board's sharpening the guillotine. Adrian, the man who'd started this entire circus, had gone radio silent. According to Ryan in IT, he'd been seen leaving the office carrying a cardboard box full of personal items, including a novelty mug that said, "I'm kind of a big deal." I almost wished I'd been there to see it. I was on my porch again, coffee in hand, scrolling through my phone as if I didn't own half their infrastructure. Technically, I did. Drake Core Systems had been reinstated under a formal vendor contract the night before. The retainer they'd wired me could have bought me a Tesla, a vacation home, or a lifetime supply of pettiness, though honestly, I already had plenty of that. At 9:32 a.m., my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code immediately. The company's legal department. I answered casually. Drake Core Systems. Mason speaking. Mason, thank God, said a voice I recognized. Melissa, the company's lead counsel. She sounded like someone halfway between a stroke and a meltdown. We have a situation. I took a slow sip of coffee. You usually do. No, I mean a real one. Papers rustled on her end, like she was flipping through a legal exorcism. I'm in the CFO's office right now and, well, ma'am, tell me you didn't. There was muffled whispering. Another voice. Jenna's, shaky, defensive. It wasn't supposed to be public. Melissa groaned into the phone. Mason, you're going to want to sit down for this. I looked at the chair I was already sitting in. I'm good, she sighed. Jenna tried to delete your Clause 9b documentation from the shared legal server. I paused mid-sip. Tried? Yes, Melissa said, voice strained. Tried, as in failed spectacularly. Your clause triggered an automatic backup to the board's cloud repository the moment she tampered with it. The alert went straight to the CEO and the audit committee. I almost spit out my coffee. She what? She thought she could update the contract to remove the clause retroactively. Unfortunately, that's not how contracts work. So the board knows? I asked. Oh, they so know, Melissa said grimly. They're in full panic mode. I've got 3 partners from the parent company's legal division dialing in from New York, demanding explanations. Jenna's in tears, the CEO's pacing, and Adrian's name just got mentioned as a possible liability. I leaned back in my chair, grinning. Sounds like Tuesday. Mason, Melissa continued, voice dropping to a whisper. Off the record. I told them to stop digging before they make it worse. Clause 9b isn't just airtight, it's nuclear. If they keep poking it, they're going to find out they technically licensed their entire audit suite to your LLC for indefinite use. Technically, I said, feigning innocence. Legally, she corrected. It's your system, all of it. I let that sink in for a second. The same people who'd treated me like an expendable employee now couldn't run a compliance check without my permission. God bless meticulous paranoia and a good lawyer from 2006. Mason, Melissa said, snapping me out of my thoughts. The board's calling an emergency session at noon. They want you there. I blinked. You want me to come back into the building? They're begging you to come back, she corrected. I'd strongly recommend showing up. I couldn't help it. I laughed. This is going to be fun. Walking back into that office felt like stepping onto a movie set after a scandalous finale. Every head turned when I entered. Some curious, some terrified, most pretending to look busy. The receptionist nearly choked on her gum when she saw me swipe my visitor badge. Mr. Drake, she stammered. You're here for the board session? Apparently, I said. Where's the confetti? She didn't get the joke. I rode the elevator up to the 14th floor, executive level. The doors opened to the familiar smell of stress, expensive perfume, and denial. Outside the boardroom, Melissa was waiting, clutching a thick folder like it was her emotional support animal. They're inside, she whispered. And Mason, maybe go easy? No promises, I said. When I walked into the room, it was like a scene out of a courtroom drama. The CEO, Douglas, sat at the head of the table, red-faced and sweating. 3 board members joined via video call from New York, their faces pixelated but clearly annoyed. Jenna sat near the end, pale and quiet, her hair tied back in a defeated bun. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Douglas cleared his throat. Mr. Drake, thank you for joining us on short notice. I smiled. I wasn't doing much. Just running your systems from my couch. One of the board members, an older woman with steel gray hair and a voice that could curdle milk, said, We've reviewed the documentation surrounding Clause 9B. I nodded. Ah, yes, my favorite bedtime story. Her frown deepened. It appears that due to the language in your consulting contract, you retain ownership of the company's core compliance infrastructure. That's correct, I said cheerfully, for nearly 2 decades now. Douglas shifted in his chair. And, Jenna attempted to, how should I phrase this, revise the agreement. All eyes turned to Jenna. She looked like she wanted to vanish into her ergonomic chair. I made a mistake, she said quietly. I thought it was archived data. I didn't realize. The gray-haired board member cut her off. You attempted to delete a binding legal document during an active investigation. That's not a mistake. That's misconduct. The room went dead silent. Melissa tried to smooth things over. Let's remember everyone's under stress. Stress doesn't justify tampering with legal records, the woman snapped. Douglas rubbed his temples. Mason, what would it take to make this right? I smiled faintly. Depends on your definition of right. Mason, he said, trying for diplomacy, you're clearly within your rights, but we'd like to avoid a public fallout. Investors are already nervous. Understandable, I said. I'm willing to help. Relief spread across his face, too soon. For a price, I added. Douglas sighed. Of course. What's your number? I leaned back, savoring the moment. I don't want more money. You've already paid me. What I want is a statement. Public acknowledgement that Drake Core Systems is the sole architect and owner of the compliance framework. That includes full credit in all investor documentation. The board murmured. Douglas hesitated. That's unconventional. So is being fired by my wife, I said. One of the New York board members chuckled before catching himself. After a tense silence, Douglas nodded. Fine, we'll issue the statement. In return, you'll restore system access. Within 24 hours of publication, I said. Written, signed, distributed. He extended a hand. Deal. I shook it. Pleasure doing business, again. As I turned to leave, Jenna finally spoke. Mason, wait. I stopped at the door. She stood, eyes glistening, voice trembling. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I gave a small, humorless smile. You meant to embarrass me in front of the company. Everything after that is just cause and effect. I lost everything. She whispered. No, I said. You just learned who everything belonged to. Then I walked out. By the time I got home, my inbox was already buzzing with the press release draft. Prime Union Holdings acknowledges and thanks Drake Core Systems, LLC, led by Mason Drake, for the proprietary infrastructure that powers our compliance and audit platforms. We are proud to continue this partnership under a renewed strategic agreement. That's corporate code for, we messed up and he owns us now. Ryan texted me 5 minutes later. Ryan, bro, you're a legend. They're calling you the Ghost Founder. Me, that's Dr. Ghost Founder to you? I poured myself a drink and sat back, watching the sunset. For the first time in months, I felt calm. Not vengeful, not smug, just calm. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore, and it was about balance. And the beauty of balance? You don't need to raise your voice to achieve it. You just need to write one clever clause and wait 18 years for karma to mature. You could measure the chaos inside Prime Union by the sound of Jenna's heels. The faster she walked, the closer someone was to being frustrated. And that Monday morning, her heels could have registered as a seismic event. Click, 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 like an approaching lawsuit with lipstick. From what Ryan texted me, the office looked like a financial apocalypse. Investors were calling, the servers were crying, and the only person with working credentials, me, was making a second cup of French press coffee at home. When you're in control, you don't rush, you let the panic breathe. By 9 o'clock a.m., the company's Slack had devolved into full-scale hysteria. Departments were tagging me like I was tech support for the universe. At Mason, can you restore access for accounts payable? We have payroll stuck mid-process. At Mason Drake, please respond. Compliance bots have gone feral. At Drake Core Systems, you are our only hope. I sipped my coffee. They finally got it, I muttered. Then came the email from the CEO. Subject line in all caps, never a good sign. Urgent. All systems compromised. Mason, we need immediate intervention. Investors are threatening legal action. I understand you're within your contractual rights, but this has gone beyond a disagreement. Please call me before noon. Douglas. I didn't reply. You never respond when they're panicking. It ruins the power curve. At 9:37, Jenna called again. I almost didn't pick up. Almost. But curiosity is a dangerous hobby. Mason, she said, voice breathless. We're collapsing. Good morning to you too. Don't do this, she said. The board's in meltdown. The systems are unresponsive and Adrian's... Let me guess, I said, hyperventilating into a branded mug. Not funny. She snapped. You're making a point. I get it. But we're both going down with this ship. I leaned back in my chair. Jenna, the difference between you and me is I brought my own lifeboat. Her tone softened, desperation sneaking through the cracks. Please, can we just talk? Privately? Sure, I said. Send a calendar invite. Through your system. I could practically hear her grinding her teeth through the phone. Then, click. By 10 o'clock, the company was trending internally as the Titanic of tech. Someone in marketing leaked a meme showing Adrian as the captain, clutching a coffee cup while the ship sank. For the first time in my career, corporate suffering was entertaining. Then, right on cue, Ryan called. Bro, you will not believe this, he said between laughs. Jenna just called an emergency investor meeting. Of course she did, I said. She's addicted to optics. Yeah, well, she walked in looking like a Wall Street power move. White blazer, blood-red heels, face set to, I'm not panicking. But dude, Adrian followed her in wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I choked on my coffee. A what? Apparently he thought it was casual Monday. Jesus Christ, I said. It's like watching reality TV for accountants. Bro, Ryan said, lowering his voice. They're trying to manually rebuild your system with PowerPoint flowcharts. I set my mug down. PowerPoint? Oh, this is going to be biblical. At 11:15, another text came in. This one from Melissa, the lawyer. Melissa. Mason, FYI, the CFO is attempting to access your private modules through an admin override. Me. Adorable. Melissa. It's triggering internal alerts. It's losing its mind. Me. Good. Builds character. Apparently, Jenna and Adrian were in her office, surrounded by a swarm of interns trying to fix the system by resetting the server keys, which in non-corporate English is like trying to repair a jet engine with a hairdryer. At 11:40, my phone buzzed again. Ryan this time, voice barely containing laughter. She's screaming at it, man, full CFO mode. You know that tone that makes coffee curdle? Oh yeah, I said. The one she used on me during tax season? Exactly that. But wait, it gets better. Adrian tried to take charge and said, Don't worry, I used to be a developer. He accidentally logged everyone out of the network, even HR. I laughed so hard I had to put my phone down. That man couldn't debug a toaster. No joke, Ryan said. People are printing resignation letters on the backup printer because the email's dead. Ah, poetic symmetry. By noon, Melissa's number flashed again. I picked up this time. Mason, she said, out of breath. The CEO wants to know if you'll attend an emergency virtual board call at 1. I checked my watch. Depends, will there be snacks? Please, she said. They're desperate. I smiled. Desperation's not a mood, it's a negotiation tactic. At 1 o'clock sharp, I joined the Zoom call. My screen lit up with the usual suspects. Douglas, the CEO, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 2 days. Melissa, clutching a pen like a stress toy. Jenna, perfectly framed in her designer suit, but visibly unraveling. And Adrian, hiding behind a fake plant in his background. Douglas started. Mason, thank you for joining. We're in a challenging position. Understatement of the year, I said. He exhaled. The investors are demanding operational stability by end of day. We need your cooperation to restore access. Sure, I said. Once the acknowledgement statement goes public. Jenna interjected, voice trembling but trying to sound firm. The board hasn't approved that yet. That's interesting, I said, because my patience hasn't approved your access either. Douglas held up a hand. All right, let's de-escalate. Mason, you've made your point. We all understand the ownership structure now. I'm not sure you do, I said. Ownership isn't just a legal word, Doug. It's a boundary. You all crossed mine when you made me apologize to my wife's ex in front of 200 people. So now, I'm setting new boundaries. Melissa looked like she wanted to applaud, but remembered her job. Douglas rubbed his forehead. What do you want, Mason? I leaned closer to the camera. A correction, not a quiet one. I want the same energy you used to humiliate me. Press releases, internal memos, all of it. You name me as the architect of Prime Union's infrastructure. You sign the retainer contract. And Jenna issues a statement acknowledging the clause. Otherwise, we let the lights stay off. The silence afterward was delicious. Adrian tried to speak. Look, Mason, I think... Don't, I said. You thinking is how we got here. He shut up. Jenna looked at me through the screen, her voice finally cracking. You're destroying everything. No, I said quietly. I'm just reminding you who built it. Douglas nodded slowly, defeated. Fine. We'll release the statement by close of business. Once you confirm restoration, we'll wire the next retainer installment. Pleasure doing business, I said, and logged off. That evening, I walked downtown just to feel the city again. Everything buzzed with noise. Cars honking, coffee shops crowded, people yelling into phones. It was chaos, but it was honest chaos. Not the polished kind you get in corporate offices where betrayal smells like cinnamon-scented air freshener. By the time I got home, the email was waiting. Subject, official statement for review. Prime Union Holdings formally recognizes Drake Core Systems LLC as the proprietary architect and primary vendor for our compliance infrastructure. We express appreciation to its founder, Mason Drake, for his continued innovation and partnership. Short, clean, factual, and the sound of surrender. Attached was another file, the signed retainer. Bigger, better, long-term. I restored system access at exactly 7:05 p.m., watching as dashboards flickered back to life across the globe. In every office, a sigh of relief rippled through the corporate hive. To them, it was salvation. To me, it was proof that silence had done more damage than shouting ever could. A message pinged on my screen. Ryan, of course. Ryan. Back online. Whole companies cheering like they saw Jesus. Me. Tell them it's just the IT guy. Then one more notification. An email from Jenna. Jenna, it's done. You won. I hope you're proud. I typed back slowly. Me. It was never about winning, just about remembering who I am. I didn't hit send. Some messages are better left as drafts. Proof you had restraint. I closed the laptop, poured a drink, and sat back. Outside, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 blinking dashboards. Alive again, but running on my terms. Chaos in heels, order in silence. You know what's funny about revenge? It doesn't end when you win. It just changes its job title. I thought I'd reached the end game when Prime Union crawled back begging for system access. I'd done my victory lap, collected my fat retainer, and given them back their digital heartbeat. But the universe wasn't done turning this circus into a comedy special. It started 2 weeks later on a Wednesday that smelled like burnt espresso and moral exhaustion. My phone buzzed with a notification from LinkedIn. Prime Union Holdings posted a new job opening, Chief Technology Officer, CTO. I almost spit out my coffee. The position used to belong to a guy named Harris, a numbers-driven quiet type who'd been trying to retire since 2019. Apparently, he'd stepped down for personal reasons. Translation. He'd finally realized this company was cursed and ran before the next wave hit. 5 minutes later, another notification popped up. You've been tagged in a post. I tapped it, half expecting another "Thank you, Drake Core" PR post. Nope, it was Douglas, the CEO himself, with the caption, "Proud to announce our continued partnership with Drake Core Systems and its founder, Mason Drake, as we expand into new innovation leadership opportunities. Leadership opportunities, I repeated it aloud. Corporate code for we can't fire our problem, so we'll promote him instead. Before I could process it, my phone rang. Caller ID, Douglas Henley. I sighed, answered. Doug, if this is another system panic, I charge double for weekends. He chuckled nervously. Not this time, Mason. This is different. The board has been talking. They want to offer you the CTO position. I blinked. Of Prime Union? Of the entire holdings group, he clarified. You'd oversee all infrastructure, global compliance, everything you already control, but with an official title and full executive benefits. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. Doug, I already control those things. The difference is, right now, I get paid more and attend fewer meetings. He tried his reasonable CEO voice. I understand, but look, our investors want stability, and they trust you. After what happened, they see you as the reason we survived. I am the reason you survived, I said. That's why I'm not sure I want to be trapped in the building I rescued. He sighed. Come on, Mason. You'll have freedom, creative control, equity. Ah, the magic word, equity. Send me the offer, I said finally. I'll review it. He exhaled in relief. Fantastic. I'll have HR draft it by tomorrow. When the call ended, I sat there grinning into my coffee mug. Life really is poetic. 1 month ago, I was the company's scapegoat. Now I was being offered a throne built from their panic. By Thursday morning, the official offer letter was in my inbox. I skimmed it, half amused, half impressed. The salary was obscene. The perks included stock options, a corner office, and the authority to hire and fire across departments, including finance. Translation: I could technically fire my wife. I shouldn't have enjoyed that thought as much as I did. At 10 a.m., Douglas called again for informal follow-up. His voice was all sunshine and spin. So, Mason, can we make this official? The board's excited. Melissa's already cleared your contract. Before I accept, I said, I have one condition. Of course, he said quickly. Name it. Jenna stays off my chain of command. No overlap. No reporting structure, no shared meetings, nothing. There was a pause. Then, cautiously, understood. She's no longer with us, actually. I froze. Come again? She submitted her resignation last night, effective immediately. I didn't know what to say. The room felt too quiet. She said she needed time, Douglas added softly. Personal reasons. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Of course she did. Chaos always costs someone their peace. Understood, I said finally. Send me the onboarding schedule. Welcome aboard, CTO, he said too cheerfully. That Friday, I walked into Prime Union for the first time as an executive. It was surreal. The same front desk that once ignored me now smiled like I was royalty. Good morning, Mr. Drake. Can we get you anything? Coffee? Pastry? I'm good, I said. Just here to make sure the building's still standing. The elevator ride up felt like deja vu, only quieter. No whispers, no side eyes. People avoided making direct contact, like I was both a savior and a warning sign. In a way, I was. When the doors opened to the executive floor, Douglas was waiting with his practiced enthusiasm. Mason, welcome back. Orwell up. He handed me an access badge with a sleek silver stripe, the kind that screamed authority with plausible deniability. We did the tour, conference rooms, the innovation lab, the executive pantry, with cold brew taps and overpriced granola. It was everything a modern tech company thinks screams we care about people while quietly owning their souls. When we reached my new office, Douglas gestured proudly. Your view faces downtown. Best skyline in the city. It was ridiculous. Floor-to-ceiling windows, private lounge, standing desk made from recycled Aeroraft aluminum. I ran my hand across it and couldn't resist saying, nice, expensive, unnecessary, perfect. He laughed awkwardly. You'll fit right in. After he left, I sat behind my new desk, looking out over the city. It was strange. This exact building had been the backdrop of every humiliation, every sarcastic whisper. Now it was my territory. I wasn't sure if I wanted to laugh or burn sage. The first email that landed in my inbox came from HR. Welcome to the leadership team, mandatory executive retreat next quarter. The second was from legal, updated non-disclosure terms for your review. The third was from Ryan. Ryan, bro, CTO, are you like Iron Man now? Me, more like Batman. Rich, bitter, nocturnal. Ryan, you firing people yet? Me, tempted. Later that afternoon, I ran into Adrian in the hallway. He looked smaller somehow. The Hawaiian shirt was gone, replaced by an ill-fitting suit. He was carrying a cardboard box again. Mason, he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Congrats on the new title. Thanks, and I said, heard you've been reassigned. He laughed weakly. Yeah, to strategic ideation. Still figuring out what that means. It means they don't want to fire you yet, but they want you to think about why you should have quit sooner. His smile faded. Right. He turned to leave, then paused. Look, I know we've had differences, but for what it's worth, you played it smart. I shrugged. It's not chess if your opponent doesn't know the rules. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. Good luck, Mason. You too, I said, though we both knew Luck had left his department months ago. That evening, after everyone cleared out, I stayed in the office a little longer. I opened the internal database, scrolling through lines of code that still bore my old tags. There they were, my fingerprints in every subroutine, every system heartbeat. Proof that the Empire ran because I'd built its bones. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt quiet, almost lonely. Power's funny that way. It amplifies silence. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Jenna. Congrats on the promotion, you earned it. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, thanks, hope you're doing okay. No reply. I looked out at the city again. The skyline blinked like a circuit board. Each window, a little light pulsing with ambition, greed, and caffeine. Somewhere out there, Jenna was probably trying to figure out who she was without the company. I couldn't blame her. I'd spent years doing the same. Now that I had everything, I realized everything didn't feel as loud as I thought it would. Still, I smiled, because even if peace felt weird, it beat humiliation. The next morning, Douglas stopped by my office holding 2 coffees. Welcome to the club, he said, handing me one. We're glad to have you steering the ship. Appreciate it, I said, though technically I already was. He laughed. It's true, but now it's official. He lingered awkwardly before asking, so, how's it feel after everything? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the skyline. Feels like poetic irony with health insurance. He laughed again, a little too hard. That's one way to put it. As he left, I opened my email again. 20 unread messages, all labeled urgent. Same chaos, different title. I chuckled, cracked my knuckles, and whispered to no one, let's make it interesting. By the end of the week, the news broke publicly. Prime Union Holdings appoints former consultant as new CTO after historic infrastructure overhaul. Reporters called it visionary. Investors called it stability. Employees called it plot twist of the year. Me? I called it what it was. The unexpected promotion that wasn't unexpected at all. Because in corporate America, the best revenge isn't burning bridges. It's buying the company those bridges lead to. A week after the promotion, I sat in my new office. Same skyline, new title, better coffee. The chaos had finally gone quiet. No more emergency calls, no ex-husbands lecturing about synergy, no CFO wife trying to rewrite my story in real time. Just peace. The kind that hums when you've finally stopped proving things to people who never deserved explanations. They called it a comeback. I called it good paperwork. The press loved the redemption arc, the ousted engineer who saved the empire. They didn't know I never left. You can't be fired from a system you own. The funniest part? My silence had done more damage than any angry email or lawsuit ever could. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam a door. I just let the system speak for me, one error message at a time. Adrian was quietly reassigned to something called strategic ideation, which sounded like a polite way of saying, we'll call if we remember you exist. Jenna disappeared from the corporate map, her LinkedIn quietly updated to consultant somewhere generic. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't love her either. I'd simply outgrown the version of myself that needed her approval. One evening, I went home early. No meetings, no crisis. I made dinner, poured a drink, and watched the sunset reflect off the skyscrapers I used to resent. My phone buzzed with another LinkedIn message. Congrats again on your journey, Mason. You're inspiring. I laughed out loud. Journey, that's what people call it when you survive hell with better lighting. I walked over to the fireplace, tossed in the old printed copy of my contract, the one that started everything. Watching it curl and burn felt symbolic. Not because I was erasing history, but because I'd already archived the important part. Me. The guy who built something unbreakable, lost it, and took it back without shouting. The next morning, I got a call from an investment group. They wanted to license Drakecore's framework for a new fintech startup. Triple the rate Prime Union paid. I didn't hesitate. Send the contract, I said, smiling. As I hung up, I realized I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was chasing quiet. Because revenge burns out fast. But silence lasts. Before leaving the office that day, I left a sticky note on my desk for whoever inherited it after me someday. It said, never underestimate the guy who smiles and says, okay. I turned off the lights, closed the door, and walked away, not bitter, not broken, just done. And in that silence, I finally laughed. Not the loud, triumphant kind, the calm, private kind that says, you won. Because in the end, I didn't destroy the company. I just reminded them who built it.